You know, you never get used to it because it's not your same podcast intro, because it's not Patriots Daily, but it's Patriots Draft Central here on the CLNS Media Network. Mike Kadlick here, Tayler Kyles there, taking you up through the Patriots pick tonight. It is round number 2. The Patriots have their franchise cornerstone left tackle, we hope, in Will Campbell. We'll parse through all of that over the next hour and a half until 7 p.m. when the second round officially starts. Patriots have picks 38, 69, and 77, rounds 2 and 3 tonight. So again, we got a bunch of special guests joining us here. We have Evan Lazar from Patriots.com. We got EJ Snyder from Bootleg, Alex Katson from USA Today, and JP Acosta from SB Nation joining us over the next hour and a half, taking us up through the Patriots pick. Should be a lot of fun. But first, Tayler, I'll ask you quickly. First of all, how you doing? Did you get some rest? We were on our stream last night. We're both yawning back and forth. It was a shit show, for lack of a better term, but we got through it, got things done. How are we doing today? And how was Will Campbell down in Foxboro this afternoon?
Yeah, we were tired because it was boring, right? We all knew what was going to happen, but I am well rested. I hit the pillow and I went to another realm. I can sleep comfortably knowing that Drake May's got some more protection. But day 2, this is when it gets exciting, right? Like, these are the real other foundational pieces. 3 picks on the day as of now. It could be more, could be less. But this is the exciting one where there's so many different ways they can go. And we're going to get to see how they want to build their identity past Bill Campbell. So very excited, and excited to hear what our guests have to say as well.
Well, let's do it then right away. We have Evan Lazar from Patriots.com waiting in the waiting room a couple minutes early for us. On time is early. We love it. Patriots.com's Evan Lazar. Evan, first of all, how you doing? But second of all, what are your thoughts on Will Campbell? We'll get into all of it, but what are the first impressions? You were obviously down in Foxboro today. You're still there with the Patriots.com unfiltered behind you. So how you doing and what's going on?
Hey guys, how we doing? I'm doing well. I'm with you guys. This morning I was struggling a little bit, but we're doing better now. I know, woe is us. Like, we have to cover the draft, right. And Barth is somewhere being like, "Oh, stop it! You're a baby." But
right.
It's all my impressions so far have been really good of Will Campbell. We actually have an interview that will air later tonight that we got to do with him with the Patriots Unfiltered crew. So that will be cool. And we talked a little bit more about him and his family. And that's definitely something that stood out. I think just in the little bit that I've been able to observe is his parents and just the way that he kind of was brought up and all that kind of stuff. You don't really know too much about the players. They're just, guys on film until you really start to get to know them a little bit. So I think everybody's excited. Obviously, in terms of the player, we all have some small C concerns, I think, about the arm length and about his ability to pass protect at this level and all that kind of stuff. But overall, I think it was a pick that the Patriots almost had to make and was kind of the layup. And now we'll see what they do on night 2.
And Evan, I'm curious because we know the talk on radio and everything has been, can Will Campbell play left tackle? And I think we're on the same page. I think that question kind of misses the points. Like, yes, there are concerns. So from your perspective, is the question whether or not Will Campbell can play left tackle, or is the question more, where is his ceiling going to be the highest on the offensive line?
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. I have no doubts in my mind whatsoever that Will Campbell can play a starting caliber left tackle. Just the question is can he be a Pro Bowl left tackle or even an all-pro left tackle? And that remains to be seen. This is not a situation that I feel and haven't the entire time that we're talking about a Joe Alt level prospect where we all feel like this is going to be a perennial all-pro kind of candidate for years to come. But just learning a little bit of what I have here today and last night about Will Campbell and the work ethic, I'll just tell a quick story from his offensive line coach. He just told me that Will Campbell, his freshman year, stayed in Baton Rouge for spring break. All of his friends go on spring break, right? They all go on vacation. Will Campbell would show up at the facility at 6:00 in the morning. And he would work for 8 straight hours every single day of spring break because he wanted to set himself up to be a freshman starter at left tackle at LSU. So that's the type of guy that the Patriots are getting. That's the type of work ethic and the type of character that the Patriots are getting. So all these things that point to that's how outliers succeed, right? Like that's how you break through as an outlier, is because you fill in the blanks, and when the people aren't watching and when the cameras aren't on you. And if you can do that kind of stuff, I know it's cliche and corny to some people, but if you're that type of person, then you can be an outlier. You can stand above the rest at that spot. So I have no doubts, like I said, that he can play the position at a starting level. We'll see how good he can get at the position. I think that's true for everybody. But really the only concerns that I've had on film with him are those inside moves, right? Like everything else I feel like is pretty clean. I don't think you see a lot of guys go around his edge, through his edge. I don't think he has any issues in run blocking, but he does have to work a little bit on those inside moves.
So on that though, you mentioned the cliche of like the locker room guy and the hard worker and he says all the right things. We'll have some clips from his press conference in a few minutes here on the show. But if ultimately they do have to move him inside and he still does end up being what we sort of hear as a all-pro / Pro Bowl caliber guard, in which we don't know because he hasn't really played the position a ton, is that still ultimately worth taking him with the number 4 overall pick? Because I get everyone's we talk about like I said, the culture builder, but also just the first pick of the Vrabel era and somebody who, they've clearly hit it off over their countless meetings. At least that's what it sounds like. He's taking them into the ground, and the story about him talking with everybody at his pre-draft interview and knowing kind of the round table thing. So like there's all these intangibles with him, but if it turns out he is just a really good guard and not a tackle, was it still worth taking with the 4th pick?
Well, it's an interesting question because what does everybody else that was taken in the top 10 careers look like? Because I think that was the biggest thing that I kept coming back to with Will Campbell was this is one of those years where after Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, there was a pretty big drop off and then an evening out of the talent across the board. So if we say that Will Campbell is just going to be a really good guard, well, is Mason Graham going to just be a really good 3 technique? And is Ted McMillan just going to be a really good receiver? If those guys end up outplaying their projections, then maybe we'll look back on this in a couple of years and say they made the wrong pick. But until that happens, it's hard to say. If let's just say he's like Zach Martin, right? Mm-hmm. And he's truly one of the greats at that position, which is an extremely high bar and probably unfair. It's kind of hard to get mad at that, right? Like if he's that level of 100%. Player, it'd be really hard to get mad about it. But I think when you look at the need that they had at left tackle, just a black hole over there for multiple years, and then you couple that with the fact that all those guys from like 4 to 12 were pretty much evenly graded for everybody, it just seemed to make the most sense to take the biggest position of need and a premium position at that. So we'll see what ends up happening. But I think a lot of the things that ended up happening the rest of the night last night, you see Colson Loveland go ahead of Tyler Warren. You see Kenneth Grant go pretty high. You see Tyler Booker go pretty high. Nobody's board was the same. Like everybody had a little bit of different fits and different flavors depending on what they wanted, needed schematically and things like that. And the Patriots, all of that married up to Will Campbell. So here we are.
And it's really easy to criticize Will Campbell because of the physical attributes. And with offensive line play, it's hard to know why guys excel all the time. So a lot of the time, if a guy does have a glaring deficiency, that's where a lot of the attention goes. So let's talk about what Will Campbell does well. They didn't take him 4th overall for no reason, right? It wasn't just because they were desperate. It's because they felt that he was the best offensive lineman in the class. So from your perspective, pass pro, run blocking on the field, what does he do that justifies the Patriots taking him with their top pick?
Yeah, I would say, his smoothness and pass protection stands out immediately. He's a really balanced and under control pass protector. Has those sudden redirects. He has a really good power in his redirects as well. I think that's the number one thing that stood out to me immediately when watching his tape. First game I put on was against South Carolina, Kyle Kennard, and he just has that ability to just mirror on an island and really move well and smoothly and balanced. And you see other guys in this class, whether it's, just Calvin Banks, for example, or Connerly or any of those guys. And sometimes the more space, especially a guy like Banks, I thought the more space he played in, the more he got a little bit under, a little bit wild with his technique, and his body control kind of waned a little bit. I didn't see that as much with Campbell. And I would also say, his core strength and his anchor is really stout. And so even when guys do get into his chest, and even when he might give up that initial jolt on a speed to power because of the length deficiency, he's got that ability to drop the anchor and really sink his feet into the ground and not move very far after that. So I thought his recovery ability, which is something that Vrabel talked about as well, whether it was, refitting his hands, redirecting inside out, anchoring against speed to power, that was that ability to kind of get out of those compromised positions and save the rep. And I think that's really important because you're going to lose initially a ton in the NFL. So that ability to recover and save the rep and not give up those catastrophic pressures is huge.
Let me ask you this. The Jacksonville Jaguars trade up from 5 to 2. They send a haul, their second round pick, their next year's first, the entire package to go get Travis Hunter, who ultimately sounds like he's going to fill 2 holes for that team. Gladstone and Liam Cohen kind of talked about that today down in Jacksonville. Patriots obviously have a ton of needs. Jacksonville has a ton of needs as well. But would you have considered giving up that trade package to number 2 and going to get a generational guy like Travis Hunter? Like, where were you? Where did you have him graded in this entire situation versus just sticking and picking at number 4? Did you think they were going to get aggressive? And, again, I guess would you have done that if you were the Patriots?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have done that as the Patriots. I had Travis Hunter as the number 1 player in the draft. I thought he was the best player in the class. But in general, I just think with the Patriots, they have a lot of holes to fill. They have a ways to go here still, and they still need to take as many shots at talent, I feel like, as they possibly can. So if you're giving up, future first-round picks and things of that nature, I don't feel totally comfortable doing that unless it's for a quarterback, and obviously they didn't need to draft a quarterback. So I kind of felt like sticking and picking made the most sense. Obviously, we were all crossing our fingers that one of those 2 guys slipped and fell to them, and maybe one of the quarterbacks snuck up there in the top 3, and it didn't happen. But I felt pretty comfortable with Campbell. I felt pretty comfortable with them picking at 4, whoever it may be. But it would have been tough for me to, in their position, to be giving up future capital like that when those picks are really valuable for them right now.
You mentioned those bites at the apple as a team that has a lot of roster holes. They got 3 today. You could make it more. Yeah. We have no idea how that's going to go exactly. But with those picks, what are some spots you'd really like to see addressed? Because there are a few holes, but where do you think their priority should lie? And what spots do you think they need to address exiting day 2?
Well, I feel like at this point, I don't want to say they drafted for need in the first round because that's probably not totally fair to Will Campbell, but they certainly did draft a little bit for need in the first round. It was a factor. So at this point, I would love to see them go best player available on day 2, which would probably push them towards like the running backs and edge rushers, right? I think that's going to be where the most talent is going to be consolidated here on day 2. I really love Donovan Ozaraku from Boston College. I think he's a really good player. TreVeyon Henderson from Ohio State's obviously a great player as well. I probably have them and Luther Burden right now at the top of my board for the Patriots. Now, I don't know if Burden's on their board. I guess that depends on how that all went pre-draft. But just in general, I think that those 2 spots, running back, edge rusher, maybe interior defensive line, that's where the talent is really going to be at this point in the draft. So just go get the best players now. You filled the gaping hole on their roster. I know everybody's clamoring for receivers and wants more explosiveness on offense. Maybe that comes in TreVeyon Henderson instead of coming in a wide receiver. Maybe that comes in one of these tight ends, that's still available. So we'll see what ends up happening. But I would like to see that more approach this time, because I think last year they got themselves into trouble by reaching on some players at positions of need and saying we need wide receiver and tackle, so we're just going to take the top wide receiver and tackle on our board, even if it's not necessarily the best player.
It kind of feels like they're in really a very similar situation right now than they were a year ago today, where, you took what felt like the obvious pick at that 3-4 spot. There wasn't much to really decide, because Patriots weren't going to go much else in a different direction than Drake May, and it's kind of the same thing with Will Campbell. But now you have more decisions to make, and they did the trade back last year, and you mentioned they sort of reached for Jalen Polk. Let's call it what it was. But now you mentioned best player available at 38. Then you don't pick again till 69. How do you then attack wide receiver? Because, yes, they shouldn't necessarily reach. But, I mean, right now the room is Stephon Diggs, who is kind of a question mark. Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, obviously question marks. Mac Hollins is, a veteran kind of just rotational piece. So if they don't go receiver, call it Luther Burden at 38, how would you attack the position from here on out?
Yeah, I would say, obviously if Jalen Knoll or Kyle Williams is sitting there in the third round at one of those picks, I would jump all over both those guys. I don't know if they're going to make it to 69, but if they do, I would really like that move for the Patriots. I'm a sucker for speed and explosive receivers. I have really no time for guys that can't run by people. Like, it just doesn't do it for me. That's not saying that there isn't a room for Jaden Higgins or Jack Betch or one of those types of players in an NFL room. I'm not saying that, but I just think they have enough of that. They have enough of chain movers and guys that aren't really going to bring that 3-level explosive-ness. So I would hope that maybe they could land one of those guys, Knoll or Kyle Williams at 69. If it doesn't come to that, I've sort of been swayed by people that say, well, maybe you just wait, until take a flyer on day 3 on an upside play, a Dante Thornton Jr. and Isaac Tesla, someone that's got some athleticism and raw measurables, but hasn't really lived up to it. Because let's face it, if they just add another 4th round pick at receiver, like, it's just kind of adding another name into a wild card hat, right? Like, you just don't know if that guy's really going to pop or anything like that. But at 106, they might be able to get a player on the edge of the defense. They might be able to get a corner. They might be able to get a running back that would actually come in and maybe contribute a little bit more of a sure thing. So I would, again, stick to the board. And at that point, I'd probably wait and try to grab one of those guys in the 5th round or maybe even later. That is more of like a lottery ticket at that position.
I think we're in the same place with receiver. I just don't think right now, with all the other holes, it is pressing enough. And I don't dislike Jaden Higgins or Eligai Manor as prospects, but every time I see them mock to the Patriots, it's like nails on a chalkboard. Like, why do we need to do this again? There's so many of these types. Again, there's a place in the league, but you've got a ton of those guys. Also, Keandre Lambert-Smith, a guy they had in for a 30 visit, one of those day 3 flyers. He's pretty exciting. But I'm curious what
if Luther Burden's there at 38, I just want to throw this out there to both of you guys. It almost feels like a just take him situation for me. Like, you need it. He's someone who was a fringe 1st round, 2nd round pick. Like, I know there is some off-field question marks, if you will. But then he's also posting it at midnight last night that he's on the Missouri field working out, I'm just ready to.
So did Javon last year. Remember that.
Okay. But it's a different skill. It's a different.
Had to say. No, I'm with you, Mike. I feel really strongly about Luther Burden. I had a 1st round grade on Luther Burden. I think that he's a hell of a player. What I love so much about him, other than the football stuff, is just some of the analytic stuff, like the early breakout and the fact that he just dominated through the competition in college. Like, I'm sorry, but the stats last year are misleading. Like, Brady Cook stinks. All right. Like, he stinks out loud. And like, he literally couldn't get him the football, and that's not Luther Burden's fault. Right. And then the quarterback can't get him the football. The season's not going well. And so then he pulls like some Odell stuff and is like throwing fits on the sideline. And everybody's like, this is a bad guy. Like, what? Like, it's everything you hear about him and from Missouri is that he's a great guy. Like, off the field, that he's really good in the community and he's a really solid kid and all that kind of stuff. He was just frustrated that the season fell apart on them. They had really high expectations. They were supposed to be a team that was vying for the college football playoff. It completely went south on all of them. And he didn't handle it well. Like, he's a kid. Like, he's 21 years old. It's going to happen. I think the biggest thing with me, with Luther Burden, is I would be disappointed if they didn't bet on themselves a little bit with Burden. Like, you have a really steady head coach. You have a coach that players respect. You have a room that, with Mac Hollins coming in that room, you hope that Diggs is that kind of guy as well, that will keep him on the tracks and keep him glued, locked into the program and all that kind of stuff. A veteran offensive coordinator in Josh McDaniels. Like, you have a program now that has some infrastructure and has some cachet with Vrabel in charge. He's the perfect kind of guy to take a risk on if you're the Patriots, because if it works out, he's going to be an absolute star here in New England, and I think it's worth it.
You may have brought me back on the bandwagon because, like, I love Luther Burden, the receiver. It took me forever to watch him because, Barth was telling us all season, like, you got to watch him, and they're making excuses. I'm like, all right, I love you, Barth. Like, it's making me not want to watch him.
he was making Luther Burden out to be the number 4 pick at this time last year. He was like, just stink again and go get him at the top of the draft. Obviously,
I know. I mean, he's been telling me about Luther Burden and like 50 other guys for about a year, but that's what he does. But yeah, I mean, you go back to watching him in 2023 when the situation was a little bit better. And I mean, he's an absolute baller. He's like Deebo Samuel crossed with Zay Flowers is sort of what I've been saying a lot of. I think he's got more downfield route running ability than Deebo does, but he has some of the ball skills and obviously the yak stuff that Deebo can do. So I kind of see him as a little bit of blend of both those guys.
Yeah, and so the only thing that kind of got me off it, also the Deebo comp, I usually hate. I cannot stand those where it's just like a guy's an archetype, but like no one's close. Luther Burden, I was watching all of his touches and targets and forgot I wasn't watching a highlight reel for a while. Until Brady Cook tried to hit him deep, I was like, this guy's freaking insane. But the only thing that dissuaded me was one, Steve Smith broke him down and did not seem like he had any patience for like some of the, not the same effort when he wasn't getting the ball. He said that a lot of the touches kind of hurt other people around him. And that's like college football too. Like these guys aren't getting paid to necessarily develop everybody. They're getting paid to win football games. So that kind of made me a little rocky because I really do love Burden. And then even last night when Mike Vrabel kind of described what he was looking for, why they chose Will Campbell, how that's the kind of player they're trying to target. I'm like, do they take a chance on Luther as talented as he is? Honestly, I didn't know about what was said about him from Missouri. That makes me feel a lot better. So now I might have to edit and slide him onto my top 5 again. I'm back in. But yeah, no, he's an electric player. One more thing before, I don't know if we got to get you out of here soon, but I'm curious your thoughts on corner, because you mentioned all the positions where there's a lot of depth. When you look at the consensus big board, it's like a ton of first round talents at corner that slipped because of injury. Would you be open at all to taking a chance on one of those guys? I kind of shy away from it because they're pretty well stocked. But also, if you're going by true best player available and these guys pass your medical tests, is that something you would consider?
Yeah, sure. I would look at, Will Johnson. The first time I watched him, I was really high on him, and I think he's a really talented player. But I do wonder if he's a true man-to-man corner, if they're going to play a lot of man-to-man like they have in the past. And then obviously with those two guys, with Gonzalez and Carlton Davis, I just did worry a little bit about the long speed and his ability to stick to receivers and man-to-man. I thought his instincts and his pedal and his off-coverage tape was a lot better than his press tape. I'm a huge fan of Ben Morrison from Notre Dame. I think that if you're going to go man coverage and you're going to get a guy that is just absolutely sticky to everybody, that's Ben Morrison, and he could probably play a little bit in the slot too if you wanted him to do that. So you could see that. I wasn't as high on Siobhan Revel as some other people. I see what he's going to bring to the table with the size and the athleticism and all that kind of stuff. I thought he was a little stiffer though and a little rigid in his movements, and was worried a little bit about that. But if you wanted to sell me on Ben Morrison or Trey Amos, or maybe a little bit later on Jacob Parrish, like I'm all for those guys as corners for the Patriots. I would just want to have some complementary skill sets in there. If you're gonna play Gonzo and Carlton Davis a ton, like you just paid Davis, Gonzo's your all-pro corner. Those guys are gonna play a ton of snaps. So you have to have a role for the guy you drafted that position, which is probably going to be in the slot. So I would look at Morrison and I would look at Parrish as those options.
Same page.
All right. Non-Patriots question before we get you out of really quick. It's the talk of the draft right now. What's up with Snyder? Where's he going to go? Did you think he was going to fall out of the first round? I'm sure. Now, again, you just like, your counterpart, Barth, you are a draft freak and you get into the tape on just about everyone. How much did you see Snyder? I know you probably watched him with Travis Hunter a little bit. What are your thoughts on him, and where could he end up? Why is he falling so far?
Yeah, I kind of feel like he's falling this far because of how he handled the pre-draft process. And I know that that's probably unfair to him, but I don't think it's necessarily Deion related. It could be sort of Deion related if this is the advice he got from Deion on how to handle the process. But
like me.
He treated the process like he was Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, or Drake May, that he was going to be the number 1 overall pick. And I don't need to throw at the combine. I don't need to work out anywhere. I don't need to do any testing. I don't need to do any of that stuff. Like, come to my pro day on this day and I'll throw in my environment and that's it. Well, that's what all those other top quarterbacks do. That's what those guys do. If he had treated the process, and you also, you've heard some stuff about, his interviews being just not good, just all around not good. So if he had treated the process with a little bit more competitiveness and kind of urgency to help his stock, then I think he would have been drafted last night. I do. But now that he kind of went about it the way that he did, and there's a lot, I mean, I haven't seen negative reports about a player interviewing behind the scenes like that bad in a while. Like people saying this is the worst interview I've ever been a part of. Mm-hmm. Like that's crazy. Like that's not what you hear very often. So yeah, we'll see what happens with Shedeur, but I wouldn't be surprised if like Jalen Milroe went before he did. I'd kind of be surprised if Tyler Shough went before him, but I wouldn't be totally blown away if Jalen Milroe is the next quarterback off the board.
All right, Evan, if you are the one on the clock at 38, you can make whatever pick you want. Who is your selection to compliment Will Campbell?
All right, if it's me, I'm taking Burden if he's there. Okay. That's my guy. I'm taking him if he's there. But the guy the position / the guy, I think they're going to go edge here. I think they're going to go pass rusher at 38. It's Vrabel. He's going to want one pass rusher that out of the top 100 to sink his teeth into. And I would also just say, they preach building through the trenches. They did it in the first round. It would make a lot of sense for them to go both sides of the ball and go offensive line, defensive line with their first two picks and take it seriously. So if I had to guess, Donovan Azaruku makes a whole lot of sense with the Boston College connection and Doug Marrone being there with him last year and all that stuff. But if it's Nick Scorton, I could also see that being the pick as well.
We're on the same page a lot with this class, and I don't know if that's because I'm listening to you too much, or maybe I don't know if I'm just seeing the clouds or whatever. But hey, man, I like it. I like what I'm hearing.
He's Evan Lazar. Evan, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. I will not take our viewers away, but if anybody does go away from Draft Central, go check out everything they got cooking over at Patriots.com. A bunch of stuff Will Campbell related. So again, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate you, man.
Anytime, guys. I'll see you guys soon.
Yep,
all right.
Thanks, Bob.
He is Evan Lazar. All right. Well, that's Evan. And we have another guest coming right on in. It is EJ Snyder from the Bootleg Podcast right here at Football EJ on X. You know him. And we are here to talk not only Patriots, but the entire first round heading into the second round of the NFL draft with EJ. So, EJ, how you doing, man? Thank you so much for joining us here on Draft Central.
Hey, you are welcome. Thanks for having me. I am super happy to be here. It is one of my favorite days of the year. I think day 2 is, if not as important, maybe even more important than day 1. If you miss on day 2, you got to hit your high picks for sure. But if you consistently miss on day 2, rounds 2 and 3, your team will eventually be empty. Like your talent locker will eventually be bare, and that will be a problem. So a lot of teams going to do a lot of work to keep their engines rolling or, refill those boilers and get rolling. And that makes it exciting.
The Patriots are well acquainted with the consequences of not doing well in the second and third rounds in recent years, but we do have a pick in the books from the Mike Vrabel era, and it is Will Campbell taken 4th overall. Now, here in the New England area, the talk of the town is, of course, the arm length and to a lesser degree, the wingspan. And can he play left tackle at all? I think that narrative has gone a little bit too far in one direction where there's no question that he can play tackle. Maybe it's just about the ceiling. So I'm curious, what did you think of the selection of Will Campbell? Did you have any issue with it? Did it make you uneasy at all? And what do you think he ultimately brings for the Patriots?
Well, I think he brings a pass protecting left tackle at a fairly high level, and those guys get paid in the NFL. They are very important. It's a need for the Patriots. Where I struggled with Will Campbell is fit with a lot of other teams. He was certainly discussed for the team that I followed, the Chicago Bears, and it was like, great, what are you going to do with him? Is he going to beat out Braxton Jones? And if not, are you going to sit, your first round pick? For the Patriots, they don't have that problem. Yeah, the runway is open. They need a left tackle. He is exactly that. I believe we'll see a little bit more outside zone. It's not like they didn't run it at all, but he's better at that, and he's very good at that. So I think you'll see that as well. But for him, there's a natural fit. Like, it's his job to lose. He is being brought in to do the thing that he was very, very good at a high level in college, in the NFL light, in the SEC. And that's probably one of the best spots where he could end up, because most other spots there was a waiting line? There was a projection. Are we going to put him at guard? Do we have to move him to right? Those are all questions for me. Some people were even saying center, and I could see it, but Will Campbell's not played center. So you just plug him in at left tackle. He protects Drake May's blind side, and you go from there. Now, it's up to him to be good. All rookies, I don't care when they're drafted, have an adjustment period going to the NFL. But what you're getting is an extremely talented player who's very light feet, very strong hands, knows how to win and win early in pass rush reps, and that's really important. That's going to help him as he develops. Is he going to get beat? Sure, he got beat in college. He was not a perfect prospect. I don't think such a thing exists. But for the Patriots, he's a very good pick, and I think his pathway to being good is better because somebody selected him and said, "Hey, we're going to have you do exactly what you did well in college."
And you mentioned ending the rep early, and people act like the short arms and the narrow wingspan. Like, yes, they are significant disadvantages, but they're not death sentences, right? Like, you can still play left tackle. So what are some of the things that Will Campbell can do, whether it's improving his technique or what have you, to minimize the physical deficiencies and maximize the tools that he does have?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't think that I'd really call them deficiencies. Sure, if he had 35-inch arms, everybody would have loved him. But he turns his body exceptionally well. And by turning your body, you can make your arms quite a bit longer. And he stays balanced when he does that. He doesn't lunge very often. He can get caught lunging, but it's rare. And he knows how to drop into his set and vary his set so that the rusher can't set up and know exactly what's coming. He's a technician. He's a craftsman. He works at this, and he's got a lot of experience doing it. He knows that, like, he didn't just suddenly wake up yesterday and have short arms. Like, these are the arms he's had the whole time. And so all the results, good and bad, are attributed to those arms as well. Will it be tougher at the NFL level? Yeah, you're going up against more, what one offensive line coach likes to call werewolves, right? So there's a new werewolf across from you every Sunday. And it's true. The aliens come out on Sundays, and he's going to see them all, and he's going to have to adapt and adjust. But he's already been playing against all those guys. Like, where do you think all those pass rushers come from? They come from the SEC. So he's seen most of them and done pretty well against them.
He said it himself, I think, where there's that viral clip of him talking about how, if you get 12 sacks, you end up as a top 5 pick. If you let up 12 sacks, you end up working at Amazon. And he mentioned guys in the SEC doing that. So he does certainly have the wherewithal to protect against those type of players. You wonder, obviously, how it works out at the NFL level. We just asked Evan this. I want to ask you, too, about the 4th overall pick and the value there, where
sure,
you do draft who you hope is going to be your franchise left tackle. But if he does end up as just a really good guard, do you still see that as a win, or do you think maybe the Patriots should have went elsewhere with this pick? I don't know if they would have ever done it. I think it would have been kind of crazy. But if they ever did what the Jaguars did and kind of send the farm ups number 2 and go get a generational guy in Travis Hunter, like, if it is just a guard, which is kind of what we've kept saying in New England over the last couple of weeks with Will Campbell, not Tayler, but is that okay with you for the number 4 overall pick?
I think that sort of doesn't matter. And I know that sounds weird, and I know it's going to fall on deaf ears in New England. That's okay. Everybody wants everybody in the top 10 to be a blue chipper, to be an all-pro, perennial all-pro, and eventually go to the Hall of Fame. That's the range that you're looking for at the top of the draft. Not every draft is cut out the same. And sometimes your team gets really lucky. My team got really lucky last year. They got the number 1 pick for the second year in a row. They needed a quarterback. There was a quarterback there. Voila. Awesome. If you need a left tackle and there's a bunch of question marks at the top of the draft, not 4 or 5 great pass protecting left tackles, you still have to take one. You can't go out on Sundays and put a little picket sign over there that says we couldn't find one. That doesn't work. If he moves into guard and plays at a high level, you still got something for the pick. I think the only way you really look at this is if he can't play in the NFL. Mm-hmm. If he gets beat consistently, which is possible. I doubt it because of a lot of reasons in Will Campbell's background. But, if he bombs out, sure, bad. But other than that, you have to consider the talent pool from this year's draft because that's where they had to select from.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the fourth overall pick in next year's draft, and they don't hope to. They had it in this year's draft, and they had to spend it on somebody. And they did, I said this last night on our live stream on Bootleg, is the teams have so much time. This is not an accident, right? They've been watching this guy for years. It's not like they just learned his name in December, like a lot of the folks who are now saying he's a terrible pick, right? They know about Will Campbell from high school, from his high school coach, from his high school physical therapist, if he had one. Like, they have been up and down the board on this guy as a person, as a player. They are fully aware. They've had him in. They've talked to him multiple times at this point. They're pretty darn sure. And this is a new regime. First pick for a new regime is always important. It sets a tone. It sends a message, whether you want it to or not. And if it works, regimes have a much better chance of success. If it fails, it's definitely an uphill climb. So they're not betting lightly on Will Campbell. Like, oh, well, I guess we'll just take Will Campbell and see if it works. Like, this is a very, very calculated choice for them.
And so Will Campbell is in the books. He sinks or he swims. We think he's going to do a pretty good job. But moving on to day 2, there's still plenty of holes that need to be addressed for this team. But I'm curious for you, because there are so many, but now that left tackle is addressed, there's no glaring holes. Who do you think are some fits for the Patriots, or some positions rather that they should prioritize? Because you could go receiver, you could go slot corner. Like, there's a lot of different spots to go. But also, if you want to go best player available, maybe it's not that obvious and you really just go with something a little bit, maybe not what folks are expecting.
Yeah, the Patriots are not one player away. So when you talk about selling the farm and giving up a bunch of picks, I blanch a little bit at that, because he better be the one. And I mean the one, because you're running out of assets to fill a lot of these holes. And they do have a lot of holes. It's targets now, I think, for Drake May. And there are a lot of different ways they could go with that. With a high second-round pick, I think it's probably wide receiver, right? I think they're going to take their pick of wide receiver that they want, big target that's going to, be able to be his bailout for a long time. It's very important for a young quarterback and a young wide receiver to get to grow together. It doesn't happen all that often, but we see this a lot of times, right? Go out and get Joe Burrow. What do you do the next year? You go out and get him the target, right? And so I think they're looking for that. If they think they've found it, if they think, again, that they sat down with a guy and they were like, yep, this is it. This is the groove we want. He's got the skills we need. We believe in him as a person, as a player, because that still comes into it in the second and third round. Day 3, more of those bets are off. Like, we'll take a chance, right? That's a dart throw, 4, 5, 6, no problem. With 2 and 3, it's not. These are still very valuable picks and very important picks. And for the Patriots, it is as well. So, boy, there's a lot of great targets, and it's whether or not they want to go outside or slot, right? And, maybe they can get somebody that can do both, but there's a lot of value there. I mean, if you want an ultra reliable vertical X, you go for a guy like Trey Harris out of Ole Miss. Like, he's an absolute dog. I thought he easily could have gone in the first round. Again, it's a benefit that, the board dropped the way it did, and he's there.
Right.
If you want a speedster out of the slot who is more than that, there's a bunch of players that can play there as well. So it's kind of pick your flavor, but there's a lot of good players. I think this wide receiver class got maligned a little bit because it wasn't necessarily as maybe top heavy as the last 2. But if you go down the board, that even if they don't do it in round 2, take heart, Patriots fans. There's plenty of other good players that they're going to find down the board. I reached out to one of my favorite Patriots fans today and said, "Who you want?" Because I love the sort of pulse of the street.
Sure.
And he said, this one spun me a little bit. Kyle Williams, who's a guy out of my neck of the woods, and Washington State, who I have been banging the drum for, and started off this draft process down in the sort of 170s, 180s, definitely day 3 numbers, and has steadily ascended. I think I first mentioned him on the Underdog podcast at the Combine the day before the drill started. People were like, "Oh, okay, we'll check him out." And he has just continued to rise since then. So saying it that they're picking second round is maybe even a little rich for me. I love Kyle Williams, and I think he'd be an excellent selection. But I would be, there would be one of those moments on the live stream where I was like, "Oh, okay, they really believe."
We'll get into these. There's our top targets. There's Taylor's top round 3 targets with Kyle Williams right off the top. So we hope that he's there at pick number 69. when they get there. I'm with you that the 38 is probably too rich for him. But again, with the way he's sort of climbing up here, you obviously never know. So that's quickly on round 2. I do want to get your thoughts on round 1 of the draft in general across the board. And for starters, you actually mentioned your Chicago Bears and Colson Loveland going to that Chicago team, going before Tyler Warren, which, I mean, they were kind of neck and neck throughout the process, but I felt like Warren was sort of the 1A to Loveland's 1B. I don't know. That was sort of my read on it. But Ben Johnson, there's no secret he loves to use his tight end. Sam Laporta kicked ass in Detroit the last couple seasons, one of the better rookie tight ends. So what were your thoughts on that selection from the Bears? Were you excited about it? Do you think they were going to go tight end at that point? There was a lot of Ashton Genty smoke at one point leading up to day 1 as well. So what'd you make of the Chicago Bears on day 1?
Yeah, it was interesting. And again, you have to look at the board. If Genty had been there, he would have been the pick without question in my mind, but they didn't get that chance, right? They didn't get that choice. The Raiders took like 0.2 seconds to turn that card in. They were like, oh, Ashton Genty's there. Great. He's ours. Bye. Right. NFL, get your advertising revenue money somewhere else. But so the Bears were at an interesting spot at 10 because there's definitely a shelf in this draft after pick 3. You guys are aware of that. Maybe even pick 4, depending on how you think about the tackles. But after that, it was a real toss-up, and it was going to come down to who picked whom and who was left on the board. And 3 of the tackles go off in the first 9, which I don't think a lot of people were predicting even a couple of weeks ago. We mentioned it earlier in the week that, like, hey, the Saints with Ramczyk retiring, they pick a tackle. They did. And at that point, you're looking at the 4th offensive tackle, if you're thinking tackle, or one of the pass rushers, which they could certainly use, but there are character questions about the guys that were still on the board, and Chicago is notoriously rough on character questions. So, nope, that wasn't going to happen. And, that leaves you with tight end or maybe safety, but, tight end seemed the much more logical choice. Again, first pick of a regime, offensive coach coming to town, sends a message with what you do with your number 10 pick. And it was a question of who they thought they could employ in that offense. I don't want to say more easily, but more effectively. And I think they both were great fits, very different players, but Warren plays all over the field, out wide, in the slot, in line, as an H-back, even lined up as a center last year. So threw a couple passes, runs Wildcat. Like you can imagine Ben Johnson's, trick playbook opening up with Tyler Warren. But in terms of Loveland, somebody said something to me about 10 days ago, and I have not been able to get it out of my head, which is, imagine Colson Loveland as a cross between Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown, because he plays out in the slot, right? And he's going to take some of those targets as well. He's not just going to take the Laporta targets. For anybody looking at Ben Johnson's offense in Detroit and saying, oh, he's just going to take the Laporta targets. Loveland is not Laporta. Loveland is a different player. He is a better route runner. He is a better hands catcher away from the body. He might not be as good a blocker, but he's also 21 years old. Right. And he's 6'5", 6'6", 248. He's probably going to top out in the high 250s. Again, he's going to continue to add mass for a couple of years. I think he'll keep his quickness and his speed. That's a scary probability. And he's going to take more of those targets because he's going to work in the slot. That's where he's the best. And he's going to eat into that third wide receiver role. So when you kind of combine those two, 50 or 60 catches for his rookie year is not out of the question.
I'm curious. You mentioned. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's exciting. That's all. I saw the pick. I was like, okay, Colson Loveland. Don't hate it. But hearing more about it and thinking of Ben Johnson and the way they could utilize it, it's exciting for Chicago. I'd say. Taylor, go ahead. Sorry.
And when I was watching Tyler Warren, I'm thinking, Josh McDaniels likes him. I could see a similar kind of thing, creative play callers. But those guys are so good at, like you mentioned, they could probably use a receiver, the pass catchers. But I'm curious, do you think that could come from another position that's not just wide receiver? Because you got Elijah Arroyo. I watched TreVeyon Henderson embarrassingly for the first time today, was immediately pilled. I'm like, I absolutely love this guy. I was an Ashton Genty fan, and I'm like, all right, day 2. I could see splitting the baby a little bit. So are there any skilled players, non-wide receivers, that you could see the Patriots maybe taking a dip on to give themselves that matchup piece that they haven't really had in a while?
For sure. And Arroyo is a good one to mention because he's right out. He's 1B as a receiver in this class for tight end behind Loveland. And very large target, seam ripper, very comfortable in the passing game, both laterally and vertically. And I think that's a real important distinction with Drake May's arm is he can, we've seen him leverage both of those routes really, really well. So if they want to go tight end, there's options there. There's also some options later on down. As far as running back goes, this is such a stacked running back class. So if anything, that might mean laying off it and coming back to it later, maybe this third round pick, or even in day 3, there are going to be multiple guys available that are offensive weapons from the running back position, both in the pass game and the run game. So it's a question of, okay, if we take a tight end here, what do we get at running back later versus let's flip that. If we take the running back here, or do we still get the same quality at tight end of the stack of the 2 players? So plenty to choose from in both of those positions. If I was them and I really wanted tight end to be a focal point in my offense, I would probably pick the tight end first. I'm not going to say second or third, but before I pick the running back, because I think the running back well is deeper this year than the tight end well.
Love it. All right. Well, EJ, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. Before we get you out of here, I know you guys have a busy night ahead over on Bootleg. So what do you got coming? And again, I said it on the last time, I'm not going to take our viewers away from us, but if you do leave the Draft Central show, head over to Bootleg. So what do you guys got going on tonight?
Yeah, we'd be happy to take all comers, that's for sure. No, we're going to hop on about 30 minutes before the round starts, and we will be with you live for every pick of round 2 and 3. We do every pick of the entire draft live, so we'll be doing the same thing tomorrow, getting on half an hour before the picks start, going all the way from rounds 4 through 7, and then we'll get some sleep.
There you go.
Always on that sicko shit, my man.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. You all obviously do great work. So thank you for joining us, and we appreciate it. Go Bears, I guess. We'll root for the Bears just as much as the Patriots this season.
Well, there you go. You only have to face them once every 4 years, so it's a good thing. But thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it. Good luck to the Pats today.
Appreciate you, buddy. Good to see you.
All right, that is EJ Snyder. We do have another guest already in the queue, but before we get to Alex Katson, we do need to give a shout out to our quick friends over. A quick shout out to our friends over at Prize Picks. We'll be right back. Prize Picks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. And all you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. So run your game all season long on Prize Picks. And right now, you can cash in on the basketball playoffs. So do not miss your last chance to add your favorite players from the court into your Prize Picks lineups, whether it's points, rebounds, assists, or anything. Make sure to just pick more or less, and you get up to 2,000 times your cash. You think LeBron James will get more than 24 points? Think Giannis will score more than 35? Cook up those hot takes with your friends and win real money this basketball season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. And all you got to do is sign up today, download the app, and use code CLNS. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Shout out to Prize Picks, as always, for sponsoring these shows on CLNS. And if you are interested in it, head over there, use code CLNS. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, we are just over a half hour until the second round of the NFL draft starts. So we're going to continue here previewing what's going to happen and also going over what happened last night in round 1. And to do so now, we have Alex Katson on the show. Alex, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Alex writes for Chargers Wire as well as Huskies Wire on USA Today. So a ton of questions for him about what happened last night and what happened tonight. My first question, I'll ask it right off the bat. The Chargers took a running back, Amarian Hampton, in the first round. I'm not a running back guy. I'm not a first-round running back guy. We went over Ashton Genty for what felt like 3 weeks on this show, Alex.
For
the Patriots. He was pro-Genty. I was anti-Genty. Tell me why Amarian Hampton was the right pick for the Los Angeles Chargers.
I think you look at the way that the board fell for LA last night. I think that they really wanted to take a defensive tackle. Obviously, Kenneth Grant went a lot earlier than a lot of people were expecting, going 13th to Miami. Derek Harmon goes the pick right before the Steelers, who had been linked to a guy like Shedeur Sanders. Emeka Egbuka goes 19th overall to the Bucks, which was a little bit of a surprise. A lot of the guys that the Chargers had sort of been linked to and had been targeting were off the board. And the wide receiver position, the tight end position, it was kind of a tough valuation prospect by the time you get to 22nd overall with Egbuka gone. I don't think that a guy like Matthew Golden was someone that was really ever in consideration for them, because he's not really much of a blocker. He doesn't really fit the physical style of offense that Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman want to run. And if you noticed last night, it took all 10 minutes of that clock for the Chargers to put that pick in. They were taking calls. Philadelphia reportedly thought they had a deal, and then the Chargers sent in a pick instead. So they were thinking about moving down. And I think ultimately you look at Omarion Hampton and the way that he's able to fit into the Chargers offense and what they want to do. They want to run the ball between the tackles. They want to grind you out, let Justin Herbert kind of take the pressure off of himself a little bit, make the big throws when he needs to, but not all the time when he has to. And so adding a guy like that, you've remade the offensive line a little bit, taking Joe Alt last year. You signed Mekhi Becton in free agency this offseason. And if you go back and you read Joe Ortiz's comments before the draft started, he's talking about, Najee Harris is a great back. We love Najee Harris. He's only on a 1-year contract, though. We want a guy that complements his skill set right now, but also maybe has some of the same traits as him as a runner. And then they draft Hampton, and Ortiz's first comments are, we really love how his mentality as a runner is exactly the same as Najee Harris's. He's a durable guy. He's taken, a ton of carries in North Carolina, has never missed a game. But Henderson has a level of explosiveness that Najee Harris simply does not have. Hampton had 2 runs this season that went for over 70 yards. Najee Harris has never had a run go for more than 37 in his NFL career. And so that's an explosive. Yeah. And so that's an explosive element that the Chargers add. They don't really have a clear RB2 on the roster in 2025. They don't really have a clear succession plan at the position. It's something that Harbaugh and Roman want to lean into with this offense and the way that they want to play. And so I think that with the way that the board fell, I'm fine with taking a running back at 22. I was a big proponent of trying to trade down from that pick, but obviously, it gets tough when a player like that someone who they felt really strongly about is on the board.
I'm very envious of the position the Chargers are in, because there's not a lot of teams that could have taken Omarion Hampton at that point, and I wouldn't have kind of scratched my head. As soon as it was in, I was like, yeah, no, that's completely on brand, and it makes sense because you got the offensive line. Now, the Patriots were a year late on the tackle class because the Chargers got a left tackle who was so good and they were so loaded, you had to send the guy to the right side. Yeah. I absolutely hate you for that. But this year, I'm not mad at the Will Campbell pick, but obviously there were a lot of pre-draft talks and talks that are still ongoing here in New England about the shorter arms, the narrow wingspan, which are, I think, legitimate concerns, but I think it's gotten to the point where we've talked about them for so long. They've grown, arms or legs themselves, and it's gone from, well, how high is Will Campbell ceiling at left tackle to can this guy play left tackle? So from your perspective, the Patriots, was he the best player available at 4? Probably not. But given the situation their roster was in, having Drake May, how did you feel about the pick? And also just how do you feel about Will Campbell as a player? Do you feel like the criticisms are warranted, or do you feel like we've kind of, thrown the baby out with the bathwater a little bit?
I personally love the Campbell pick. I graded Campbell as a tackle. I graded him really highly as a tackle. He was my OT1 in this draft. I do think that the reasons that people want to move into guard make sense, right? In terms of the arm length and everything. But the way that he plays at tackle with that super upright stance, because his wingspan is a little bit smaller and he has to play upright like that, that's not really something that translates super well to guard, because you can't play that upright in a stance like that on the interior. You're going to get blown back immediately. And so I do think, and I did hear, that most teams had him graded at tackle. EJ actually is the one that told me this, but he told me that at one point 31 out of 32 teams had Will Campbell graded as a tackle, and the 32nd team only had him graded as a guard because they had 2 offensive tackles on their roster already. And so
the Chargers
yeah,
it very well could have been, right? Like, you think about, like, the Chargers could have done that. Like, a team like the Eagles maybe could have had it like that, like one of those teams. But yeah, like, it very well could have been the Chargers. But I think you look at the way that Campbell was produced in this LSU offense, the mentality that he brings, like, you listen to that interview that he gives on the stage after being picked, where he says, like, I'm going to fight and die for Drake May out there, right? And the level of like the culture that he's bringing to the left tackle position and the mentality that he's bringing to the left tackle position, I think like obviously all of that stuff, all the intangible stuff doesn't like fully outweigh what happens on the field. But I think that you feel a lot better about the potential on the field because you know that like this is a guy who's going to work his ass off to be a franchise left tackle for this team. And I think that that's something that probably appealed very strongly to Mike Vrabel, who is a big culture coach. And I think that's probably something that appealed very heavily to the Patriots organization, who's always been a very strong culture organization. And I think that when you put all those things together, I think like my personal evaluation, I think Campbell is going to be a great tackle. I do think like the length concerns are maybe a little bit overblown. Now, I'm not saying he's not going to struggle at times, especially with some of these longer rushers on the edge, but I do think that it'll be enough that he can be functional. You can kind of like work around it for the first couple of years while you kind of like figure out what you have in him and move forward with that. And like if you're able to reform the stance and everything with your offensive line coach in the building there, maybe you can move him to guard after a couple of years if it doesn't work. But I do think that like he should and he will be given the opportunity to fail at tackle, and I am high on his ability to stick there.
So that's the fourth pick. They select Will Campbell. Alex, you just kind of fired me up even more about Will Campbell. I've been pilled on Campbell as they say, and I think I'm pretty much all in on the pick. But now we go to round 2, starting at 7:00 tonight. Patriots still do have some holes. They have picks 38, 69, and 77. Thinking of it from a Patriots perspective, as I'm sure you know very well, they took Jalen Polk last year, around pick 38. Washington Huskies wide receiver did not work out so well. So should they attack wide receiver again? Should they go for best player available? Where would you? What direction would you go in if you were the Patriots at the top of round 2?
You know, I'm always going to be a proponent of taking the best player available. I do think that there's a decent chance that at 38, the best player available is a wide receiver, though.
Yeah.
And so I do think that there's probably an opportunity where those two things kind of coalesce together. I will say, as someone that covers the Huskies, I do know Jalen Polk, and I do know kind of like this is a kid where like confidence is such an important part of his game. And I think that very quickly he got a little bit down this season in the Patriots org. It's a long way away from his hometown. It's a long way away from where he played college ball. It's a very like stark change for him.
Sure.
It kind of seems like he got a little bit down his rookie season very early on and just like had a hard time getting out of that rut. I do think like you can still coax some stuff out of him. I know Patriots fans probably don't want to hear that. They're probably ready to move on from him. But like I still think like knowing Jalen and knowing the kind of person that he is, I do think that there's plenty of opportunity to still coax some talent out of him because the talent is all there. It's just a matter of like he has to be kind of built up by a coaching staff and kind of like told and like reinforced that like,
Sure.
Hey, good. If you make a mistake, like we're not going to pull you. We're not going to bench you. Like we're not going to, we're not going to dock you anything. Like he has to give you the opportunity to grow and work through it. Exactly. That said, I do think that there's like a pretty good chance that at 38, a wide receiver is the best available, whether it's a guy like Luther Burden who slips a little bit, who, would be more of a slot exclusive type guy. If it's a guy like Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, the Iowa State wide receivers, even if it's like someone like you're super high on Jack Besh and you like another culture guy, right? Where it's just like you want to just like lock that guy in. We've already seen so far in the first round the disconcern for that teams have had for the valuations of players across the board, right? Where like this draft class is so flattened out kind of in the 15 to 50 range that really like if you're high on a guy, you should just take him at this point because there's no guarantee that he's going to be available where a consensus board or where the media has him ranked just because like this year is so weird. Other than wide receiver, I do think like one name that I kind of have circled is Donovan Ezeraku, the edge from Boston College. He's a guy I've loved since like September, October of this year. I thought he had a fantastic season this year. Obviously, the Patriots probably would have loved to have Abdul Carter come to them at 4. And I think the edge is still a little bit of a need there. And, so Ezeraku is kind of a guy that's towards the top of my best available board that I do think would be a great Patriot as well. Maybe a guy like Nick Scorton if he falls a little bit to that 38th pick. I think like you're looking at like edge and wide receiver are kind of the spots where I see a lot of value. Maybe running back if TreVeyon Henderson gets there. There's a couple of different spots that you can go, but I do think like generally speaking, best available is always kind of like where I'm going to lean.
So when we look at Arif's consensus big board, half of the top 10 players that are probably going to be on the Patriots range are cornerbacks. And they're guys who are like first round talents, but they got hurt and now they're going to be available on day 2. Do you think, or would it be responsible for the Patriots to invest in one of those guys? Because yes, they're talented and you want to go best player available if they're high on their board. Would you take a risk with the injuries, even though they already have Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis, where sure, you can load up on one position and say, we'll figure it out, but Carlton Davis's contract says he's not going anywhere and Gonzo's an all pro. So how do you think about that potential of them just capitalizing on the depth at corner?
Yeah, I do think that like you are correct about that, right? Like we have Will Johnson, we have Savon Revel, we have Trey Amos that are all available kind of in that top 10 range of Arif's consensus board that's still left coming in the second round here. But with a lot of those guys, right, like I think that the Patriots are a franchise that's sort of in a position where like you can't necessarily risk a top 40 pick on a guy that has a medical concern, right?
Agreed.
Like you're not necessarily in a spot where you can say like we feel good enough about our franchise and where we're at as an organization that we're going to load up on a position where we have guys already and hope that like the medicals, don't become an issue down the line, right? Now, if you're not necessarily confident about Carlton Davis being on this team long term, right? Like if you think like he's going to be on the team for 1 or 2 years and we need someone to pair with Christian Gonzalez long term and we feel good about the medicals, right? We feel better about the medicals than we feel about a different player that maybe doesn't have those flags but is a little bit further down the board. Then I think that like you can talk yourself into doing that, right? Because I think with a lot of these guys that have the medical flags, you can take them, have them be sort of a CB3 for you coming in with Gonzalez and Davis in front of them. And that sort of mitigates the risk that you're, burning that medical flag early, right? Because like, it's less reps, it's less game action for them. It's less opportunity for that flag to kind of rear its ugly head. I do think that ultimately, like, again, like I said, I don't necessarily know that the Patriots are an organization that's in that position. I think that like there's enough holes in the rest of the org that with a top 40 pick, you should just take a guy that's going to be ready to play that you feel good about as a potential like 8 to 10 year guy. But you may not have one of those right on your board at this point. Like we talked about this draft class, the valuations are so all over the place. It's totally possible that the Patriots are just like, well, we're out of guys that we like. Let's just take a stab on, a Will Johnson type or a Savon Revel type and figure it out later.
Will Johnson, is this medical concern thing? I know I don't know how privy you are to this stuff, but it felt like this kind of just like, why does something like that only come out halfway through the first round and not throughout the entire pre-draft process? Like that kind of, not that it makes no sense to me, but you're watching, it's like, oh wow, Will Johnson's falling. He's still, someone at one point could have been considered a top 10 pick in this class, and then he's falling. And then at pick 25, you get the rap sheet tweet notification. It's like, oh, he's dealing with something pretty serious. So a twofold question. Why does that happen, do you think? And is he someone who, fallen this far, is he ultimately worth a dart throw?
Yeah, I do think that, once you get to that point, right, I think that there's a lot of people that have questions about like, hey, why is Will Johnson still on the board? It's pick 25. Why is this happening? And so you kind of have to like get the word out at that point and be like, okay, like the knee injury is pretty serious.
Fair.
It is something that I had heard about as early as the combine. And so it has kind of been like batted around kind of in league circles for a long time. But I think when you get to the actual first round of the draft and you have, people that are not necessarily as connected to the draft all year round, right? And people that are just tuning in on Thursday and they're like, well, I've heard of Will Johnson. He's great. Like I know, he's a top 10 player on Daniel Jeremiah's big board and on Mel Kiper's big board and stuff, right? And then he doesn't go. Then it's like, well, what's going on? I don't understand. I have heard that the knee stuff is pretty bad. I think Brett and EJ were talking about it last night, and it sounds like based on what a PT told Brett, it's like a ligament replacement procedure that he had where like the return to play rate in all athletes is like 73%. And for football players, there's only like a sample of 2 guys, but neither of them were able to return to play at all. And so like it's a big concern that teams have, right? And it's one of those things where I do think that, like, I thought that he might go like late at the end of round 1 to a team whose Super Bowl window is wide open. You know, you look at like Cincinnati, Buffalo, like even like a team like Kansas City or Philadelphia that doesn't necessarily need a guy like that right now, but just say like, listen, like when healthy, this is a top 10 player. We don't really care if he only plays 5 or 6 years in the NFL because our window's open now. So if he's great for 5 or 6 years and then like isn't able to play after that, doesn't matter to us if we get a ring or 2 out of it, right? But I do think, yeah, it's a gnarly business, man. But I do think, you know, that kind of plays into consideration for some of these teams. You know, as far as like why it doesn't come out until like right now, right? I think as like Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, all these guys, like at the end of the day, they're there to report what the agents give them, right? And if you're Will Johnson's agent, you're going to tell them like, hey, keep this on the down low, keep it quiet, you know, like don't let this get out, right? Because like we don't want everyone to know that Will Johnson's going to fall to 45, right?
Yep.
Because like he's a top 10 player when he's healthy, right? And so like maybe like, you know, somehow a team hasn't heard about it or their doctor feels confident about it, and it only takes one team, right? You hear that all the time with the draft. So if one team doctor feels confident about it and all of a sudden Will Johnson's going in the top 20, then you never hear about this ever, right? Because the team doctor's just like, we're good. And so if it doesn't get out, then maybe that happens. But then he starts to slip and it's like, okay, cat's out of the bag. Like everyone knows what's going on here. Nobody's been fooled.
I want to do a cat's on the bag pun there real quick, but I'm gonna let it pass. You were down at the Shrine Bowl. So I'm curious, are there any guys that you saw down at the Shrine Bowl that impressed you that you think people should have an eye on day 2 or beyond, but specifically day 2? Because I know you were high on some guys, and even like seeing some clips, there were some guys that felt like maybe they could sneak into this day. But either way, if you can think of some guys that would fit the Patriots, let us know, please.
Yeah, let me look through the best available here and kind of see if I can remember who was at the Shrine Bowl and versus the Senior Bowl, because I was at both. But
yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, but once we get into kind of like the hundreds, Chris Paul Jr. is a kid I really like, the Mississippi linebacker. He's a little bit undersized. You know, it's kind of a tough proposition there. I do think that like Reef's consensus board has him at 106, which is kind of like fringe 3rd, 4th round player. I have heard a little bit lower than that for him just because of the size stuff. If you're looking for like a defensive tackle, CJ West and Jordan Phillips were the 2 best players at Shrine like the whole week. Both those guys I love. Yeah, like I do think that CJ West probably goes in the 3rd today. Jordan Phillips, I'd probably say 3rd as well, maybe slips to the 4th, but I would be pretty surprised about that, just because he's awesome. Let's see who else. Scrolling through here, I think like if you're looking for, you know, kind of a burner type at wide receiver, a guy like Ty Felton, who might have been at the Senior Bowl instead of the Shrine Bowl, but you get the idea, right? Like a guy like that, you know, Kobe Bryant was at Shrine, and he's a great corner. Again, like if you want to wait a little bit and take a guy kind of as a developmental guy behind Carlton Davis, you know, there's a lot of good options. I do think like the value for a lot of those Shrine Bowl guys kind of gets into like the day 3 conversation. I do like some of the offensive linemen kind of on day 3. Logan Brown, the Kansas tackle, Bryce Cable, the other Kansas offensive lineman, was a great player at Shrine. Way down the board, like towards the end of day 3, Marcus Weir and Thomas Perry on the interior of the offensive line, I think are work dart throws. Like there's a lot of talent in day 3 kind of from that Shrine Bowl group, and a lot of guys that I do think could end up making a difference for an NFL roster.
We'll get you out of here with this. Who do you want for the Chargers on day 2?
I am hoping that Elijah Arroyo makes it to 55. I'm worried that he won't, but I'm hoping. If
they
not,
have a tight end right now.
Will Dissly and Tyler Conklin.
That's not going to do it.
So yeah, so tight end was a very popular position in the 1st round. Obviously, we saw them come off the board a little bit earlier than we were maybe expecting yesterday, and so not really an opportunity to grab one yesterday night. But I do think if Arroyo makes it down to 55, he's 59 on the consensus board, so it's possible. That is what I had in my final mock over on Chargers Wire. If he's gone, I would probably lean wide receiver. You're looking at a guy like Jalen Royals, maybe even like, if you're not comfortable trading up in the third round, I wouldn't mind taking Torrey Horton at 55 just to get your guy if you're really high on him.
Yeah.
Again, like we talked about, values all over the place in this draft class. Just grab a guy that you like. I do think, like if Besh makes it down there, I think that he's a perfect Chargers fit at 55. But I definitely think that like they're going to continue to attack the offense here on in the second round.
Love it. All right. Well, added Alex Katson, thank you so much for joining us here on Patriots Draft Central here on CLNS. Alex again writes for USA Today, Chargers Wire, and Huskies Wire. Appreciate the info on Jalen Pope too. I've been in that boat as far as let's give this guy a chance. It's only 1 year, and it's a round 2 pick. So good to know that you're a bit higher on him than some of these nasty Patriots fans that I mentioned.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thanks so much, buddy. It was fun.
Good to see you.
That is Alex Katson. All right, we have the queue up again. We got one more guest here on Draft Central, but I'll tease it out because we do need to give a quick shout out to our friends at Game Time. So before we get to JP Acosta from SB Nation, quick word from our friends at Game Time. We'll be right back. Patriots Daily is powered by Game Time, the best place to get last-minute tickets to your favorite events. And with the NBA playoffs officially here, we all know it's better to go see games in person. So make sure you use the Game Time app to get to your favorite team's games today. They have last-minute deals with killer prices. You also get the all-in pricing feature, views from your seat, the lowest price guaranteed, and so much more. And Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA playoff tickets. I'm heading in to Boston this week to watch them take on the Magic, and I use the Game Time app because it is the best place, my favorite place, to get tickets to your favorite games with their last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% off by buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download the game. I don't know why that happened.
That was very fast.
Download Game Time today. Use code CLNS. You get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase on the Game Time app. We are now officially 15 minutes out from the start of round 2 of the NFL draft. Patriots picking at 38, 69, and 77. It'd take us all the way up to the beginning of the second round here on Draft Central is none other than JP Acosta from SB Nation. JP, how the hell are you doing tonight on this Friday ahead of round 2 of the NFL draft?
I'm doing great. I'm not really too worried about not having a second round pick. My favorite team went unicorn hunting.
Yeah, you got Travis, baby.
I mean, I can't really explain to you the moment of like, oh, they actually did it. Like there were rumors of them trading up and wanting to trade up for Travis Hunter. They were always the team, the source that was like, there's one team head over heels for Travis Hunter. That the Jaguars were the team. They were the only one that was like, yeah, we really want this guy. And if you watch James Gladstone, Jaguars GM, talk about Travis Hunter and just like look at Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
It's like
his press conference today, he was like completely smitten by that dude. Just like
it's like he literally saw a unicorn.
Yeah.
This is a franchise altering move because Travis Hunter is the face of a franchise. He does everything. So it's kind of crazy. It's like, oh, we're seeing a Jaguars franchise after years of kind of being always being the team that gets picked on, always a team that gets stepped over. Finally, they're the ones who do the aggressive thing. You go out and be aggressive and get Liam Cohen. You go out and be aggressive and you add a 34-year-old GM to his first career job. And then you go out and be aggressive and get your franchise cornerstone. So regardless of what happens today, I'm cool with whatever happens the rest of this draft.
Love it.
Can you talk a little bit more about James Gladstone? Because honestly, hearing him say that, I was pretty cool with Travis Hunter because I'm like, I see the vision. Man, he's talking about, no, we want to revolutionize the game, which is like what you want to hear from these young wonderkins. But I'm like, nah, man, like I really believe it when he says it. So like, what's the deal with this guy? Because he's gotten me really excited. I am indifferent on the Jaguars.
everything that I have heard, especially from Jordan Rodriguez, who covers the Rams, has done a lot of really good work surrounding James Gladstone and his move over to the Jaguars. He is such a football maniac and a literal wonder kid. Like, he was the one who helped the Rams revolutionize sort of their draft process. He's the one who really helped them with the additions of Jared Verse and Braden Fisk. So I always felt that Gladstone was a really aggressive and a really smart hire by the Jags to kind of help them get into a modern age. And then they picked Travis Hunter, and it's like, oh, I see what you're trying to do. It felt kind of telegraphed. Now that I look back on everything that James Gladstone said leading up to the draft, he was like, look, we got our guys that raised the floor for this team in free agency. They went out and added offensive lineman, Jordan Lewis. But then you hear them talk, and it's like, we want touchdowns. We want to raise the ceiling. We are not afraid to go out and get our guy. And something that stood out when I think Mike Silver put out the story today about the process of them going out and getting Travis Hunter is James Gladstone kind of just being like, we're not afraid to go and chase being great. And it's just like, oh, like, it feels weird to actually have a GM like who actually really like gives a crap about going and being great.
That's not Trent Baalke, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's the complete opposite of what Trent Baalke would do. Right. Trent Baalke would have taken Shamar Stewart or Michael Williams at 5, and I'd just be like, what the heck? So I love this pick for so many reasons outside of like the fact that Travis Hunter was the best player in this draft class, but it just signals a new age, a new idea or mindset, and it's led by a 34-year-old who clearly is not afraid to take those big risks.
Mm-hmm. So I want to ask you about Shedeur Sanders. I saw you wrote something on SB Nation today about his sort of slide. But before we get into the rest of the NFL, I do want to bring it back to Patriots here for a second. They obviously take Will Campbell with the 4th overall pick. Tackle, sounds like he's going to play tackle for this team. Sort of the arm length question marks. There's this whole narrative surrounding him. But what are your thoughts on Campbell? What were your thoughts, rather, on him as a prospect, and how do you see him fitting with the Patriots? Do you like the move by New England?
So I actually gave this pick, I initially gave it a B+, but then when Campbell was like, I'm willing to die to protect Drake May, I was like, all right, I'm sold. That's all I need to hear from an offensive lineman. And I think Will Campbell was the best offensive lineman in this class, but I don't know if he's a tackle in this class. And I think it's not just the arm length. The arm length, like, it is what it is at this point, you know, like, he's not going to magically grow longer arms. That's not the biggest reason why I think he could be even better at guard. I think for him, I think he's more of a fine athlete than incredible at the tackle spot. And I think he ends up drifting when he's in pass protection because he has longer arms. So he's got to go try and beat the guy to the spot, which ends up, when you see him get beat, is always being beaten to the inside, or he's beaten with an inside fake because he's got to overcompensate for the edge because he doesn't have the pure arm length because he keeps drifting. So I think it might have been better mitigated at guard, but for the Patriots, you just want to get the best 5 out there. Yep. And I think Will Campbell gives you the opportunity to put your best 5 on the field. He feels like a Vrabel guy. Like, if you hear him talk and you hear the way that he talks about football and his approach to pass protection, the run blocking, he sounds like a Mike Vrabel guy. It sounds like someone who fans will easily fall in love with because he's just going to show up every day, regardless of what happens. And he's going to bring just my favorite thing about Will Campbell is the core flexibility and the core strength. Above anything else that he does technique-wise, it all starts with an impressive strong core because he's just able to anchor, he's able to root guys out, and all that power comes from his hips and through the midsection, and it kind of helps him compensate for a lack of length because he can just anchor down at any time. I think it's just a really solid pick for the Patriots who just needed talent up front. You need to be able to get your best 5 out there.
Can you talk a little bit more about what Will Campbell does in the run game? Because obviously pass protection is what matters the most. But I think another really big issue with this Patriots team, other than like the holes all over the line, was that even the left side, one of your few veterans, wasn't able to consistently move the line of scrimmage or stick onto his blocks. And Will Campbell, I mean, he can block outside zone. The guy can pull across formation. He can move and reset the line on down blocks. So what does he bring to this ground game? And how do you think he complements the guys they have? Like, we know Morgan Mosesen and Wendell on the right side, Garrett Bradbury probably in the middle. Might be Layden Robinson, who showed as a left guard, but, we can even say that spot still may be up in the air.
I think for Will Campbell, the first thing that stands out is how precise he is with his hands on double teams. He's able to strike the hip and he's able just to knock people over because of how accurate his hand placement is. And I don't think he gets talked about a lot with offensive linemen, just hand placement on down blocks, but it makes a lot of sense when you watch him play. He is so technical to a point where he's able to get to that down block. He's able to get to the second level. I think sometimes he can be beaten a little bit by speed at the second level, which is why I think sort of like he's just a fine athlete rather than a good one. But for me, it's just the grip strength and the torque. And I think that also comes from his core and his midsection, where he's able to stand guys up and then he can just move them with his hands. He's able to get guys out of gaps easily. And I think that's going to really help a Patriots offensive line that, like you said, is still coming together, but it feels like they're going to lean more into the gap scheme. They're going to go back to a lot more of the power, the duo, the counter. And I think Will Campbell's a really nice fit for that.
So that's Campbell. Pick number 4. Super excited. I think, relatively excited. I'm warming up to it as soon as we get more guests on here and everyone kind of talks up Will Campbell. It was a weird spot for the Patriots to be in. When I saw, when I saw Jacksonville talking up the trade up to 2, I was like, there's going to be a mystery team here. It's going to be New England, and they're going to go make the jump from 4 to 2, and it obviously didn't happen. But we're here with Campbell now, and we feel good about it. But now we head into round 2 with still plenty of holes to fill on this Patriots team. It's not, and frankly, probably the reason why they didn't go push for a Travis Hunter trade, because they still need to fill all these holes. Pick 38, pick 69, pick 77. JP, who are some top players available in your mind at the top of this round that the Patriots can go get and continue to fill out this roster?
So I think initially at 38, you got to get some help for the Patriots receiving core. I think you need an outside receiver. You need an X. But at the same time, I think having a guy with some verticality, some explosiveness in the offense could really help kind of loosen it up for a guy like Jalen Polk, who wins in between, and Stephon Diggs, who wins in the in-between area. The first guy I think of is Jalen Noel from Iowa State. He has that ability that the second and third year that he can hit downfield is insane. It's one of the first things that I noticed when I turned on the tape of him after the Senior Bowl. It's like, oh, this is real. Like, he has real speed, but it's not just that. It's the concentration downfield. I actually think he's a little similar to a guy like Christian Kirk, where you can move him around a lot, but if you want him just to take the top off of defense, he can run sort of the screen stuff. So I think getting that explosiveness back in the offense will really help, especially when you have guys like Polk and Diggs who occupy sort of the in-between areas of the field. So it's weird because he's more of an inside receiver, and you have Polk who's more of a Z, Diggs who's kind of aging gracefully into a Z. So you think they need an X. But at this point, there's Jaden Higgins from Iowa State, but I think he's more of a ends, like slants, ends, and posts instead of the true like vertical downfield threat. I think Elik Iomanner could be interesting. He's a phenomenal blocker, one of my favorite players in this class, just because you can line him up inside and he's gonna go like beat the crap out of some safeties in the run game. But he also has that speed to attack downfield. His issue is he doesn't play as big as he normally is. So you wonder if he's not going to be an option there at 38, because you just want somebody with a little bit more ability above the rim, especially when you saw Drake May throwing the ball downfield. You want a guy who can make those 50-50 passes into like 60-40. And I think Iomanner can do that, but it's less consistent because, big, tall, fast, you should be able to. And then I think outside of receiver, I honestly think adding a second tight end could honestly kind of help that offense out a lot. I think when you think of Josh McDaniels, you think a lot of 12 personnel. You think of that ability to just beat the crap out of teams in the run game, and you have multiple tight ends who can win after the catch. You can have them win downfield. I think, honestly, like Arroyo sort of doesn't make sense because he's not a great blocker.
Yeah.
But he brings downfield speed instantly. I think that's something that makes a lot of sense. Terrence Ferguson is an interesting player who I think can do a little bit of both. I just wish he's got to play bigger as well. So I think that when you get to this point of the draft, finding guys who can be specialists, like a Jalen Noel, a guy who can create explosives downfield, maybe a guy like Torrey Horton around 79, where you can get him as sort of the bigger body receiver who can kind of do a little bit of everything. Yeah. I think Jack Besh is incredible at just like the little dirty work stuff as a receiver. He'll go and like grind teams down in the run game. He's tough over the middle, and he's really good after the catch. And that's something that Mike Vrabel really talked about after he was hired, is winning after the catch. But all that kind of leads me back to is Jalen Noel.
Yeah.
So
all roads lead back.
All roads leads back to Jalen Noel. I think that'd be the perfect player for the Patriots and what they want to be on offense.
I think we're on the same page there, brother. And before I get you out of here, I got to do something with it we haven't done in quite some time. We need some superhero comparisons for each of the team we cover's first pick. So Travis Hunter, I'll even give you two different heroes you can use. If you get one, I will be very impressed. And then Will Campbell. Who do you got? DC, Marvel, any universe you want. Give me some comps.
Okay, so I actually wrote the Travis Hunter comparison earlier this year, and I think I'm going to stick with it. It's Ben 10 because he can be anything that you want on a football field. I'm sure if you asked Travis Hunter to go play quarterback, he probably would. He is that much of a football maniac. So I think Ben 10 makes a lot of sense because he's so versatile with all the different aliens. It's still the same person, but he can do so many different things in terms of attacking and defense. With Will Campbell, I think of a guy he's super reliable. He's going to be there regardless of some of the lack of tools. And he actually has this ability to do a lot of different things on the offensive line. And you think initially I kind of thought of Hawkeye because he got kind of underrated in terms of like MCU Hawkeye. It's tough because he's the only one without powers. He's one of the only people without powers, but he's always there on the front lines. He's able to do a lot of different stuff in terms of stealth, in terms of recon. He can fight. I actually think Hawkeye might be a really good one there, but
I like it a lot.
I actually also kind of like Daredevil. Because Daredevil doesn't have the one thing that everybody has, which is sight. Will Campbell does not have the arm length, but where Daredevil makes up for it is heightened senses everywhere else. Will Campbell doesn't have the arm length, but he has the technique, the torque, and the flexibility that are much better than guys that are much longer, much taller, much bigger than him. So I'm kind of leaning Daredevil for Will Campbell.
I love all those picks. Ben 10 hit me in the nostalgia spot. Like that one was real deep in my soul. Hawkeye love, I very much appreciate. And then Daredevil, we got some recency there. Knocked it out as always, brother. That was awesome.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Appreciate you. As always, JP. Before we get you out of here, let everybody know where they can find you, what you got coming for the rest of the draft. And what you're cooking up for the rest of the weekend.
So today I'm actually doing live grades for rounds 2 and 3 of the NFL draft. Make sure you follow over on SB Nation for that. I'll be back on SB Nation's TikTok breaking down some of my favorite picks from round 2 and 3. And then after rounds 4 through 7 and on Saturday, I will also be on TikTok breaking down some of my favorite picks then and just covering my favorite draft classes and some of my favorite picks overall.
Love it.
Hope the Pats are in there.
I'm sure they'll be there. If they draft Jalen Noel, they will absolutely be in there.
Let's go. All right. Well, that is JP Acosta from SB Nation. Check him out anywhere on social at Acosta32JP. And again, thanks so much for joining us, JP. We appreciate you as always.
Of course.
Good seeing you, buddy.
Later. All right, guys. We are officially here. It is the beginning of round 2 of the NFL draft. Let's roll who's on the clock?
That's a good
Cleveland
question.
Browns. Cleveland Browns are officially on the clock. It is the start of round 2. Oh, look at that guy.
Seamless producing there.
Unreal. We got another special guest, and we're going to flip the hosting duties to John Zannis here from CLNS Media, Celtics Garden Report. That's how we introduce all these guys. But he is here, and he's going to take over the reins as we officially get in to round 2 of the NFL.
Yeah, I'm neither special nor a guest. I live here full time. Sadly, I'm more of a squatter. But anyway, obviously you guys have kind of covered it all here. But we're on it, right? And again, it really comes down to the quarterback run, right? Like, is this what's going to happen here? And every single quarterback that gets picked is great news for the Patriots in terms of what they want to do here. I know you had a host of guests on here. So just let's have that Sanders conversation one more time. What's the feeling here? Like, what's the vibe? It's almost like a game of it's like Clue, like who's the suspect? Who's going to do it? One of these guys is going to jump up, with the revolver in the study. Somebody is going to be the suspect. They're going to pull the card. What do you guys think happens here?
I am thinking Shedeur. I think now you're at the range. Yeah, I think so. For the Browns, at least. Yeah.
I think Browns Shedeur right here, right now.
I think so. Because I think he learned his lesson, right? Like John, you got kids. Sometimes they get a little big for their britches. You're like, all right.
I hate that narrative.
Life lesson.
I freaking hate it. What's wrong with being? I honestly, I hate the too cocky narrative, but some of the stuff is undeniable.
Back it up though.
I know. I just, it's like the worst interview I've ever had, and this and that. Like that kind of sucks. But you do wonder, like, whether he got some bad advice. Like, hey, you don't want to go to these places, so don't make them like you. Like I don't know exactly what happened there, because he's supposedly a well-liked guy among his teammates, right? Like he doesn't give off that vibe, and he was a good leader there. So I don't know. I wonder, do you think it was all behavior that knocked him down to this point? And if it did, if it's going to knock him out of the first round, if you didn't want him there, like, did you want him at all? Like, your behavior doesn't get better because you're drafted in the second round. Like, he's still the same guy.
So my read on this whole thing is that he was never really a first-round pick. He was never really a first-round talent.
It's not really a slide. Right?
Yeah, it's not actually a slide. It's just, I guess, his attitude, his upbringing, if you will, with Dion, which isn't a bad upbringing. I mean, shit, his dad was one of the best football players ever, and he's now turned himself into a fringe NFL quarterback, hopefully by tonight. So when I say upbringing, I don't mean it's necessarily a bad thing, but the attitude and the way that they sort of were like, well, and as Evan Lazar said earlier in the show, like, I'm not going to throw at the combine, and I don't need to do this, and I don't need to do that, and I'm only going to take visits with certain teams, and it probably rubbed people the wrong way. And when you have even a Pittsburgh Steelers who seemingly are still in on him, sitting there at 21, it's like, well, do we really want him, or can we get somebody else and we can kind of go in or out on this guy later? So I wonder when I ultimately think he's probably going to go to the Raiders here in the second round. And that's also because I bet Shedeur to go to the Raiders earlier this morning. So I'm hoping that happens to cash in on a little something there. But regardless, no, I do think that the connection with Tom Brady, TB12 did sign him to an NIL deal at one point a couple of years ago. He's worked out there. He was hanging out with Geno Smith at one point this offseason. So I think there's something with Vegas. Geno signed a 3-year extension, some sort of, Geno Smith goes to into Shedeur Sanders type of bridge there. So that wouldn't shock me, but it also wouldn't shock me if he does go here right now at 33 to Cleveland.
Yeah, for me, I think the whole thing is just he wasn't as talented as he needed to be. Like, he is a pocket passer. And to be a pocket passer in this NFL, you need to be incredibly cerebral, like very smart. And frankly, at Colorado, he was behind such a bad offensive line. I don't think it did a whole lot to help his stock either, because he spent a lot of time running for his life as a quarterback who does not excel when he is not well protected. So yeah, I wasn't totally surprised. Like, Albert Breer and other insiders have been warning us for weeks, if not months, that Shedeur was a guy who could slip into the 20s, if not out of the first round entirely. And then it became more like, all right, it feels like this is going to happen. And then with Dart, it's like, yeah, all right, if you want to take the literal dart throw on talent, same reason why I wouldn't be surprised if Jalen Milroe ends up the third quarterback off the board, because he gives you the upside of like, all right,
he has an elite something. Yeah,
exactly. He has the superpower. So yeah, I was not surprised by Shedeur dropping, and I think everything else around it just exacerbates it. Like, yeah, you are a pocket passer without great physical talent, and we might have to deal with your dad. And, I don't even want to get into all the other stuff, but yeah, I just think all the other things don't help, because if you're a good player, people will put up with you. And if you're very talented, but if you're someone where they feel like they're maybe taking a chance on you when it comes to a premium pick, then yeah, it's going to affect your stock.
I get it. I'm now rooting for him. I was indifferent before, but I kind of, I like the chip on the shoulder revenge tour sort of thing, because, I think it's paying for the sins of the father, if that's truly what it is, I think is a little bit shitty. And this notion coaches don't want him because, whatever they're. So I know you guys have talked about it in terms of your players. How much consensus do you have? And again, I'll put up Mike round 2. Yeah. Burden, I know everyone loves, but Tayler, who hates Luther Burden for some reason.
No, I love him. I was worried about some of like the things that people are concerned about with the effort and the consistency and all that.
Yeah. And so does this, Mike, why do you like him? Because again, I feel like the knock on him is what Taylor's saying here about like the not a Vrabel guy, doesn't love football sort of thing here. And it feels like everybody's thinking edge here, with the Pats. I don't know where that intel's coming from other than it's Vrabel and he grabs somebody who does what he did because he values it. But you walk through your guys here. I know you've done it already, but let's reset the board.
So we actually haven't even gotten to our guys. So this is perfect
good.
timing.
I'm glad. Hit it.
Yeah, yep. we went right into guests. Evan was very much on time, so we kind of just rolled through them. So these are our top 5.
How cocky was Evan?
Cocky and confident. No, he was fine. He was good. He gave a lot of insight actually into Luther Burden and sort of turned Tayler onto him a little bit. And so as far as it goes, best player available versus drafting for need, like I am guilty of always wanting to just draft for need, because it's like, well, you don't have a receiver that can just be that guy. Go get the receiver that can be that guy. I don't care if TreVeyon Henderson is a better running back than Luther Burden is a wide receiver, for example. Like, you have Ramondre, you don't have a wide receiver. So I am good with Luther Burden at the 38th overall pick. I think he slid and could have been a fringe first round talent, like he could have been at the end of of last night. So go get a guy who can be Drake May's security blanket, for a lack of a better term. You bring him into a room with a Stephon Diggs and a Demario Douglas and kind of go from there and work it out. So as for the rest of these guys, I still am kind of going positions of need, where defensive linemen, edge rushers, Ezeraku, Mike Green, and Darius.
Sorry.
What they do.
Browns took former UCLA walk-on linebacker Carson Schlesinger.
Wow. Okay.
He's awesome, but apparently it's because JOK's future is uncertain.
Wow, this is Tayler Kyles Mapu moment here. There's a Tayler Kyles out there somewhere in Cleveland pumping his fists right now, excited. And
funny enough,
is like,
poor
what?
Bastard.
Taylor, remember when we brought up Daniel Jeremiah's list of guys who he thought could actually sneak into the first round? We were talking about Jared Wilson. We were like, well, that's kind of strange. Carson Schlesinger was one of his guys who said he could sneak in at some point. So he's just outside of that first round. And oddly enough, the reason Taylor was so obsessed with Marte Mapu was because he was one of Daniel Jeremiah's guys towards the back end of that round too. So this leaves Shedeur on the board. It's also lets some other guys like a Luther Burden and Donovan Ezeraku and Mike
slide it down.
Keep sliding. So it's not a quarterback, but it's somebody who I wouldn't have necessarily plugged in.
How many guys in here are you thrilled if they take, Mike? All of them? Because again, if you're picking 4th in the round or 5th in the round, you're getting one of these guys. You feel you like everybody.
Yeah, I
here,
would be okay.
Or
with
is it like Burden here and everybody else well below?
Burden's my number one, because I just think you need more talent on this offense around Drake May. Ariante Ursery I threw on because we've talked about that double dip a little bit with Campbell and Ursery. It sounds like Campbell is just their left tackle no matter what, so I don't know if they'll actually do it.
Jaden Higgins is off the board. Now we don't have to freaking talk about it. Let's go.
We just got a Tayler Kyles pumped up moment because Jaden Higgins is gone. Where is he now? So that's the Texans. Okay. But no, John, long story short, I would be okay with any of these guys at 38.
Okay.
So
wow.
And
that is yeah.
So the Texans
They must have
Jaden Higgins.
Okay, Jaden Higgins. So now we're on the Raiders,
and like that's a pick that makes sense for them, right? They've got Tank, they've got Nico, so they've got their Z slot, they've got their X. Jaden Higgins is that big intermediate kind of big body guy. This is the kind of team he should have gone to, where he can be a complementary piece and not have to be like a full-time X. And that's why I didn't like him. I didn't think he separated terribly well intermediate. I didn't think he had the speed to win deep, and I didn't think he played big enough to compensate for the fact that he wasn't that fast. So I'm glad he went to a good destination. I do like the player. I just didn't think he made any sense for the Patriots. And reports that he was one of their top guys, I was just like, eesh, please let him go off the board before they even have a chance to think about it.
Yeah. Yep. So Jaden Higgins, that's fine. That's done. And inching a little bit closer. And again, you guys love to see it. That your guys haven't, for 2 picks in, and your guys haven't made it. Let's throw Taylor's in there as well. And is it now the Raiders are on the clock? Is that correct?
It's now the Tennessee Titans are on the clock at 35.
Titans are on the clock. Okay, sorry. Titans on at 35. Tennessee Titans on the clock. You know there's no quarterback here. These guys might take a receiver.
Oh, Seahawks just traded up.
Uh-oh.
Wow. Who do they want?
They don't want a quarterback because they just signed Darnold, and who they have? I think they have Darnold. Drew Lock.
They're coming up for Burden.
Are they?
I don't know. That's just what I'm saying, guys. I got to pop out 30 seconds. I'll back in. Sorry about that, guys.
Nope, you're good. We can mess.
So let's try to guess. So wide receivers, they're not looking too hot. They have Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Cooper Kupp, so they could probably use.
Oh, I forgot they got Kupp too, and they also have JSN, obviously,
and they have Jake Bobo, if that means anything to you. Did they pick? No. Offensive line, they're pretty good. Yeah, they're good, I think, on the offensive line, or at least solid. Maybe this is defense. Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy. Oh, God, no, they have a pretty good defensive line. Maybe a young A.
Would they go up for like a Donovan Ezeraku?
Maybe.
How high did they come up?
They have Uchenna Nwosu. They have Uchenna Nwosu.
Oh, yeah.
And Boye Mafe, who's pretty good. I don't know, honestly. I don't know this team well enough.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, they're not hurt. I would think maybe Luther Burden would make some sense, as some explosiveness, because Marquez Valdez-Scantling, he's probably on a 1-year deal. Right. Yeah, like River Craycraft, Jake Bobo, Steven Sims. Yeah, I think that.
So it would be, if they got him, it would be Kupp, JSN, and Luther Burden.
MVS / Luther Burden.
Yeah, okay.
A lot of condensed formations. I don't know where the S is in that situation.
I mean, shit, it's a Sam Darnold-led offense that could use any weapons, because you saw how special Sam was last year when they actually had shit around him compared to what he was doing, elsewhere with the Jets. So maybe it is a wide receiver.
We will see. Time we traded up.
Yeah. You got to know what you're doing. Again, just in terms of the draft itself, the Texans just walked their pick up to the podium. So again, we've got a little bit of time here with this trade coming in here, so we'll see what they get here. And waiting on the Patriots thing. Taylor, did you get to go over all of your list here?
Not yet.
No, we didn't. We pulled it.
Let's put it back up here.
So I'll put an asterisk. I'd have Luther Burden at the top if the Patriots are okay with all the question marks. Like, I think he's a phenomenal talent. I loved watching him. I'd absolutely be on board.
You're the GM. You get to decide.
But Evan's my number 2. So in that scenario, Luther Burden would probably be number 1. But what I had before the show, Donovan Ezeraku, I think he's got the length, the bend, and the burst to be a handful as a pass rusher. And he wouldn't have to be the guy this year, because you got Caleb on Chason, got Harold Landry, got Keon White. You got a little bit of depth there. You just need a long-term answer. TreVeyon Henderson, I got pilled today. I actually hadn't watched him a ton because I wasn't sure if running back would really be that high a priority for the Patriots unless it was a Genty. Finally watched him. I mean, the guy's a weapon as a receiver. He's a really good runner. Like, had a ton of long scores.
Not a receiver.
Huh?
Not a receiver.
Who is it?
Safety.
Emanwari?
Yep, Emanwari.
Okay, they have Josh Jones. Who's their other safety? Julian Love and Kobe Bryant.
They trade up for a safety. While you're talking about this stuff, the TreVeyon Henderson, who's the best player, Taylor? Like, forget need. Who's the best player available here that you think, like, if you were going talent only here in the second round, because if you feel Campbell was a draft for need pick and also might have been arguably the best player at that point, but who knows? Who's the best player right now, talent wise?
Luther Burden. It's Luther
Burden is.
Yeah, like I think he's got Pro Bowl. I don't want to say all pro necessarily because I think he's got to develop more as a route runner and be a little bit more well-rounded and consistent. But like talent-wise, he is special. I think Donovan as a Rocky was a tier below in terms of like what I think he could be. I also want to pull up the consensus big board just so I'm not totally talking out of my butt. But I mean, I remember when I looked at it earlier today, it's Luther Burden. The only reason I was concerned is because there are some questions, and Mike Vrabel talking about Will Campbell. He's durable, he's consistent, he's accountable, and all these things. I'm like, I'm not sure if Luther Burden's that, but Evan did mention that he's someone that people loved inside the program. So if it was just a one-year hiccup where he was pissed off that he had a bad quarterback, I am willing to be a bit more understanding, and I do think he's the best talent on the board.
Okay. Well, he's not on this list here. You did like you do like Jalen Noel here though as well.
I do, yeah. So Jalen Noel, I think, and JP loved him, and I think a lot of people like him for the same reason. He gives you that verticality that you need. He also plays bigger than he is. He is undersized, about 5'10", like 195 pounds, but he's got strong hands. He'll go up and elevate, and he's a separator. So he doesn't have to make a ton of contested catches if the ball's where it's supposed to be because he's a really twitchy guy. He's got that extra gear where once he stacks, he can actually pull away and create some big plays. And I think he's a gritty guy. He'll block well enough for the role. And he was a captain, high character guy.
Do we want to know what happened?
The Browns.
Quinshon Judkins.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
He
went ahead of his teammate. He went ahead
of his teammate.
Yeah.
It's like this is like the Pats drafting Sony.
Yeah, seriously.
Honestly, yeah, it is. I was reading a scouting report. One of the reasons I like TreVeyon Henderson, he was a captain. And apparently when they asked him about adding Quinshon Judkins, they were like, hey, are you cool with this? Because you're our guy. He was like, do what you got to do. That's fine. And you love that, man, especially running back. Like most teams have a committee. So you'd rather have a guy who doesn't really mind if it's his week or not. He can just fit into the role, especially with Josh McDaniels. Like think about 2011 when they had Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis, and Woody, and they still double dipped with Shane Vereen and Stephen Ridley. So
all right, so let's think and reset here a little bit because
and yes, guys, we are tipping a little bit. I apologize for those watching at home, like the way the draft the way God intended, where like the people walk up and they announce the pick and you react to it. Yeah, we don't do that here. The picks are being tipped, and once they're out there, they're out there. So we can't not react. I apologize for spoiling the experience for you. But yeah, that's what's going on here.
37 right now, which is the Raiders, who could very well take Shador. And then we got the Patriots at 38. So everybody, me and Taylor wrote out so far, is still on the board. So maybe one of us gets lucky here and the Patriots end up with someone. So we're right on the edge of the Patriots 38th overall pick.
That's very exciting. Does the Shador nightmare end here?
I hope so.
What would you say Burden was entering the season in mock drafts? A good bit higher coming.
Luther Burden?
Yeah,
mid first,
top 10 pick.
He was right. So, I mean, I love that kind of stuff. Like you want. Taylor. I've said this a million times before. Give me all your pot smokers and your petty thieves and your like guys who like have character concerns that aren't real character concerns. You don't want assholes. You don't want people doing violent stuff or like whatever. But like if it's small ticky tack, whatever. I can live with it. If there's larger concerns and you're going to have a real head case here, I'm not saying Polk falls into that, but you've already got Javon. But you've got Baker, you've got Boutte. Like you don't have a lot of room for knuckleheads in that receiver room.
Right.
So
Kayshawn, maybe not for long. Maybe not for long.
I don't know if I buy that either. I feel like he turned things around. But anyway, how much would that factor in here? Even like a smidge of knucklehead.
I think you have the leadership to kind of turn that around and not let that happen. With Vrabel, with Stephon Diggs, realistically, and Mac Hollins. Like I think Stephon Diggs is a leader. I don't think he's in this knucklehead group that everybody thinks he is. So I would be okay with Burden, even if there is a little bit of that knucklehead you're talking about. I also wonder if it's really there and if it's kind of another one of those draft season manufacture type of things. Like he was in Missouri's facility last night at midnight as soon as he wasn't drafted. Like, this guy wants to work hard. He also wants to show he worked hard. And like you said, Taylor, earlier, Javon Baker
did that last year. Who showed us how hard he was working last year?
I know. But you need talent. Mike Vrabel said it when Giardi asked him last week, how do you weigh good guys versus talent? He goes, well, we need good football players. And that's what they need. And Luther Burden is exactly that. So I just want Shaver to go here.
Oh, I thought somebody. Oh no, sorry. I think it's still valid because, like, Alex was talking to us about this during the season. Alex was trying to get me to watch Luther Burden tape pretty much all, like, anytime we were waiting to go out for practice. He's like, oh, Luther Burden, don't listen about it. Like, his quarterback sucks. He's a good player. So, I mean, I think that some of it is legitimate, but I also could see it being overblown because he was so frustrated and is still young and maybe immature. But we also know that Mike Vrabel is willing to work with guys like DeJuan Jones, where the weight was an issue when he worked with it. He like kind of just leveled with him. And if they have the infrastructure and they believe in it, I could see them taking a chance.
Imagine if you're a Browns fan right now and you could have had theoretically, again, you only know what you know, but you could have had Travis Hunter, you could have had, and you passed. You could have had another shot here at Sanders if you thought that he was the guy and you passed. People, and then you take the other Ohio State running back. If you're a Cleveland Browns fan, are you thinking like, what are we doing, man?
Again, there was people were trying to say that they were going to get Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders together. You end up with neither of them, the second Ohio State running back and Mason Graham.
Raiders do anything yet?
Not yet. I'm still
what
waiting.
are they doing, man? Maybe they're trying to trade the pick.
Yeah, maybe. I'm going to pop out for 2 seconds. I'll be back in jiff. For the pass pick.
Trying to see if there's any news updates, but there's still, the Patriots have like a ton of options still. Everybody that was on for the best player available at the top of the second round, but Nick Amanwari is still on the board. I'm going to try to pull up the list really quick just to get Dolphins. The Dolphins traded up with the Raiders. There you go. That's why it took so long.
I see.
So who do the Dolphins? Maybe you're Luther Burden?
They like that stuff.
Tyreek is, maybe not going to come back because that's
cranky.
The whole thing.
This is their new Tyreek in the McDaniels offense.
It might be. I think they need some more size at receiver, to be honest. But if they want that explosiveness, it would make sense. I'm kind of excited to see what this ends up being. But let me try to get that list up again all right, so according to Arif Hassan's consensus big board, which takes several big boards and condenses them, so it's pretty much what like the overwhelming majority. That's what a consensus means. I don't need to explain that to you. Number 1 is cornerback Will Johnson out of Michigan. 2, wide receiver Luther Burden. 3, safety Nick Amanwari. Again, he's gone. 4, edge Donovan Ezeraku. 5, Siobhan Ravel Jr., the corner. 6, edge defender Nick Scorton. 7, cornerback Trey Amos. Oh, the Patriots are on. Wait, what? What just happened? Oh, the Dolphins took a guard.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Nice.
Which honestly, smart by them.
Here we go.
The Patriots are on the clock, fellas. Do we have here we go.
New England Patriots are on the clock. Jonah Savalanea.
Nice.
Yeah.
Not the Patriots. That's the Dolphins that took that.
That's the Dolphins.
Clearing it up.
That's the Dolphins.
All right. What do we got, guys?
Is there a lineman left here? There is still Ursery, right?
Ursery.
I was not opposed to the double dip here at O-line. But I am really curious what they're going to go here. And again, for vibes, you think it's best available or based on need? Because again, you can fill. You have a lot of needs. You can fill several needs here with this pick.
Something just tells me that this is going to be Ezeraku. I look around the board.
It makes too much sense.
Best available without concerns. Like Mike Green's a concern. Luther Burden's a concern, I guess. Ezeraku, you have the connection to BC. Could have been a first-round pick. It just feels like that's going to be the move here. But, we'll see what happens. We got
everyone wants this, right? Everyone will feel good about Burden.
How would you feel about Ezeraku, John?
Fine. I
Okay.
mean, it is. I'm officially in the you have a lot of needs, and it's you're not going to fill them all in one draft. And so you got to play the board as it lies. You saw the mistakes they made last year. You can't do it again. Right. So I'm fine. It's just at this point, we don't know enough to know. Like, Burden to me strikes me a little bit as the guy that the media likes more than the personnel guys. And if he kept falling and falling and falling, we wouldn't have any idea. It happened to Javon Baker last year. Javon Baker was in both of your possible round 2 targets list, and he's still there in 4.
Right.
So like,
right.
There's guys like that don't make sense. And you're like, what is it? And the intel just might be stuff that we don't know or we don't have. And down and down and down they go for whatever reason. So
A.D. Mitchell was another one like that.
Yeah. Yep. So it's really, really, really hard to know there. But again, I want to bring Sexy back here and see if we can get a receiver, particularly one.
Draft Justin Timberlake.
Yeah, especially one that was rated a potential top 10 pick. Here, the possibility of a trade down is also here, because if the Patriots in fact have 3, 4, 5, 6 guys that they really like, they're not in love with Burden, and somebody wants to jump up and get their receiver or something like that, wouldn't be stunning. So we'll see here with the Patriots on the clock. Just to let everybody at home know, we're going to do the same thing we did yesterday, which is once the pick is made, we'll talk about it, we'll analyze it, we'll get into that a little bit, and then we're going to probably take a pause, jump off the stream. These guys have been going for 2 hours strong here, and jump back up at the beginning of the 3rd round when the Patriots are going to go on the clock again and take us all the way through. Celtics fans, I hate to pull people away from this stream, but I'll let you guys know now, I'm hopping over into Celtics land after this. We do have a playoff game and a Garden Report, so we will have some post-game coverage there as well, but you can watch it all. I'm excited. Are you excited?
I think they're maybe trading the pick because this is taking a minute.
I'm excited.
It seems like teams are trying to come up, and there's a lot of players the Patriots could take. I wouldn't be mad at a trade down here.
I wouldn't either, honestly, because
I don't want them to trade it, because then we got to stay on this street. No, I'm just kidding. Well, and then it's funny on that. You said that we've been going for 2 hours. It doesn't even feel like it, because we've just been kind of rolling through it. And
you guys are awesome. But yeah, the guests help, I'm sure, a lot. Anybody drop any nuggets that you were surprised to hear, or any intel in the 90 minutes that preceded the start of the draft? Anybody open your eyes with something like, oh yeah, I would, how about that guy, or anything like that?
Evan with Burden was my big one.
Evan talked Taylor off the Burden ledge. Alex Katson joined us, who writes for USA Today about the Washington Huskies, and basically was like, Jalen Polk just needs another chance and he could be okay.
And good. As long as he could be okay.
No, I think he does, as a 2nd round pick like he was last year, deserve another shot. I don't think he should necessarily be cut just yet. Now, granted, I also think it's because you just spent a little bit too much draft capital on him. And that's why I would give him another chance. But I do think that he showed enough early on. The entire last season was a mess. Throw it away and give him a second chance here. And Alex kind of told us, like, look, he's somebody who, not necessarily that he needs his hand held, but like, help him along and he'll be okay. And I think he could be as well.
Could be teams. I mean, you're still talking about teams coming up from for quarterback here as well as a possible thing. Yeah. Also, it's pronounced Shuck.
Yeah.
Right.
Tyler Shuck. Yeah.
Shuck. Right. Okay. Just making
called him Tyler Show for like a month.
Good.
This is feeling like trade back. This is taking too long.
We're down to 1 minute. There's so many calls. They don't know what to do.
Taylor, you're hilarious. I don't feel good. It's just a draft, Taylor. It's okay.
My insides feel like they're being ripped apart. It's literally a
somebody
draft.
Vomiting on the show would be a first for sure. Just out of nerves, pure nerves.
Oh boy.
Refresh.
Literally. Oh
god. This is taking too long.
Trade. What do you think? Trade or disagreement?
Whoa, wait, Jonathan Jones just said they'll make the pick and it's all about supporting Drake May. Luther Burden?
Luther Burden.
Or a tackle.
The Patriots pick is in.
It is?
I wonder if it's TreVeyon Henderson.
So it's going to be a weapon? TreVeyon, let's go!
Yeah,
TreVeyon Henderson, baby.
All right.
What did I say? I said earlier today that like last year I watched Jalen Polk in the 11th hour and was like, I actually like this guy. TreVeyon Henderson, I watched for the first time today and was like, I like this guy.
Wow.
A running back. It's a little early for running back for me. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay.
I know. All right. I can live with it.
I'm cool with this. So a big thing about this, I think, is one, the character was a big part of it. Like when I was looking, so the reason I decided to finally watch TreVeyon was I was looking, I'm thinking about what Vrabel said about wanting the character guys and all that and the toughness. And I'm like, all right, I read the scouting reports. TreVeyon stood out because he was a captain. He's very selfish. He's physical. Like it all sounded great. And we know that Ellie Wolf keeps telling us that they really like the running back class. And I'm watching this guy and I'm like, he's a perfect complement to what they have. He's got the speed, the explosiveness, receiving ability, great blocker. I really like this pick for them. And I understand the value people may not like, but if you wanted best player available, if they didn't like Luther Burden in terms of the off-field stuff, Donovan Izaraku probably is better value pick, but I really like TreVeyon Henderson, so I'm cool with this.
So what does this mean for, as we talk about, this, you might have felt safe in your job in Foxboro last season, and you're Ramondre Stevenson, and you signed an extension, which was even at the time before he fumbled, 40 times during the year, a questionable move for, somebody who I think is a mid-tier talent, but clearly to me more one of the running backs that you use up on a rookie deal and you move on to the next guy and just keep rotating through, not a re-sign guy. So I was surprised that was it, but that was a lot of what the business that the Patriots did was kind of re-sign the guys we want to keep and let's at least have some professional people here. And Stevenson fell into that mold. Not only was he fumbling, you could argue he was less effective than Antonio Gibson at the end of the year. Yep. And Vrabel has said everyone gets a fresh start, which is a good and a bad thing. Like you could have sucked, but you could be good for me, or you could have been somebody the past regime liked, and that doesn't mean anything to me. And that, if you're Ramondre Stevenson right now, you have to wonder what your standing is in Foxboro.
I think it's good. And this is again, like this is why I mentioned the 2011 class, they double dipped at running back, even though they already had Ben Jarvis Green Ellis and Danny Woodhead, who were pretty like entrenched starters at that point. So Ben Jarvis is going to be a true rotation, but TreVeyon Henderson fumbled one time in college, at least as a rusher. So that's the big thing. It's like, if you can't trust Ramondre and if you can't trust Antonio Gibson, all right, TreVeyon, you're the guy. Don't put the ball on the ground.
Well, it's an athlete. Like an athlete,
yes,
like a 4.4, like a 4.4, 40-inch vert athlete, 11 foot broad jump. Like this guy is an athlete. So you have you're adding an explosive element to your game. And again, we're talking about beefing up the offensive line here. And I know you work your way, right to left here. I do believe that you can open some holes for people much better than they were able to do last year. I don't know exactly where they're going to be in pass pro all the way across. You still have no clue what's going to happen at left guard. Center is still a bit of a question mark there, but I don't hate this at all. I really don't, because here's the thing. You're talking about where the value was in this draft. The value was, especially in day 2, running back and edge, right? Like among the
injured corners.
Right. But right, exactly. Among the areas that people thought there's some great players that you can get here. You got a guy that might be, the second or third running back on the board in a class where people are predicting there's going to be 5 guys that are going to be 3-down starters in the NFL, maybe by the end of year 1. So this is a pretty high level talent to get, even though second round, it does feel like a bit of a luxury pick, for the Pats here. But if you don't love a receiver, if you don't think Burden is any better than what you've got in your room right now, if that's their evaluation, then why bother, right? That's that I understand. If they're looking at it and being like, I've got 5 Luther Burdens right now. I'm trying to figure out what to do with these guys. I've got DeMario. Like, I'm okay. I'm going for a home run here. This feels like a home run swing. So you might not love it, but you got a talent.
And we keep talking about, like Mike Vrabel said, he wanted to take the best player available. That's where he leans philosophically. I don't think it's a crazy stretch to say that they maybe had TreVeyon Henderson higher than a Donovan Ezeraku or than a Luther Burden, because Luther Burden, like we said, there were some question marks, and whether or not you agree with them, the team maybe just didn't want to take that chance because they said this is a big culture draft for them. And then Ezeraku, like, they know him very well. I'm sure if they really thought he was, the kind of guy they needed to add to this room, they would have. And really, if you look at the consensus, so I'll look at the guys that were on the board. So Mike Green was never going to be, I think, on their board. Shedeur Sanders, obviously, no. Luther Burden, Donovan Ezeraku, Siobhan Ravel, Nick Scorton. That one, I don't personally love Nick Scorton. I would have understood it. And for the edge rushers, I think there's a bit of a drop after him. I wouldn't have minded it. But if maybe they just didn't really like him or have him as high, then it's Benjamin Morrison, Ariante Ursary, Azariah Thomas, Mason Taylor, Xavier Watts.
Bears took Burden.
Luther Burden's gone. Chicago took him.
Yep. Go ahead.
That's actually not that bad.
Yeah.
Wait, sorry. Let me make sure that I've got this so the only players that I think would have made sense were Donovan Ezeraku and Nick Scorton and maybe Trey Amos. Those were the players that were higher that were available. So I don't think it's like this crazy reach where we're talking like Jalen Polk. Maybe could have had him in the middle or the end of the second round. This is one where, like, no, the consensus had him at pick 37.
I wouldn't have been surprised if Henderson. 40, I wouldn't have been surprised if Henderson went in the first round last night. So,
right.
Like, I don't think it's a reach for the player. I really just wonder where the room, you have Ramondre, you have Antonio Gibson. Like, yes, he can do more. He has a higher ceiling.
Jags,
I know, but so are all, like, a lot of running backs end up turning into Jags. And look, I don't love it as much as you guys.
It's not
I'm
the
okay
love
with it.
Yeah.
It just kind of feels like I wanted more at a position of need. And I went over I always lean towards draft for need, and it's not the right way to do things. It's really not. And, you wonder if Tom Curran's kind of been floating that Ramondre Stevenson could be traded at some point. He was talking about that this offseason. You wonder if they just lean into TreVeyon Henderson as your lead back. That would change things, but we'll see what happens.
Could you live with another Polk? Like, not as bad. Polk had a historically bad rookie year, so not that bad. But, like, again, this is the reality of this draft that I think we've known all along was you're going to draft a tackle that's not really a tackle, and there's not the receivers that you want. So this wasn't a great year to suck again if those were the two needs that you needed to fill. It would have been nice if you hit on your lineman in your last year, but you missed. And you weren't going to do it again this year, most likely. I mean, you took your shot at Campbell, but I just don't think the receivers were there this year. And I think think what you will about Burden. Maybe he was the guy, maybe he wasn't. But if he's not their guy, it does feel like I don't mind going in this direction. And again, offense. I'm glad that this happened because I was afraid after the lineman situation that Vrabel might kind of, do the Belichick thing and get into defense because I like defense and that's what I know. And that, but he didn't. We're offense, 2 picks in. And I feel pretty good about that.
I do as well. Like, and hey, this is the philosophy, right? They told us you want to get the best player available. It makes sense. Now stick to it, right? Continue to do this where if we start seeing reaches and it's like, all right, that's way off the consensus board. Now, if they, if they end up taking, say, I'm trying to think of like a Jalen Rivers, say. It's like a guard type. He's 4th round. If they take him in the 3rd, then you start saying like, all right, what are we really doing here? You're reaching for something you may perceive as a need. I'm kind of reaching there. That's just kind of the first guy that popped into my mind. But I understand people aren't going to be happy with the positional value. But again, they said they had a philosophy. And I really do think that Henderson isn't just a running back. This is a guy where he could be on the field while you have Antonio Gibson on the field, while you have Ramondre on the field. And it's not like, oh, sorry, really quick. But remember like with in 2022 where they did it with Zeke and Mondre, and you're like, I know what you're trying to do. That's not what these guys are. They're not fast enough. They're not versatile enough. Henderson's the kind of guy where you can have him as a bit of a joker in the backfield, in the slot, in motion, and they actually have to respect him because he is a legitimate home run threat, and he's got the route running ability and the catching ability to be a threat all over the field. So, again, I understand why people are going to say running back, ew. I don't think he's just a running back, which is also why I was higher on Genty, because even if he's like an elite tackle breaker, but he can't catch, it's like, no, he can pass block, he can catch, he can run. He's a weapon. And that's what this team needs more than anything, more than a receiver, more than a tight end. They need weapons. They got the offensive line. Now they address and get a weapon. And I think the best one that was available outside of Luther Burden.
TreVeyon Henderson's best college season was 4 seasons ago in 2021 when he had 183 carries, 1,200 yards, and his best receiving year as well. He had 27 catches for 304 touchdowns. He does have both the receiving and the running ability, obviously. He does have a lot of tread on his tires. He's been a fringe starter for Ohio State. He obviously split with Judkins, the last couple seasons, and I think he's dealt with some injury, but he also does have an explosiveness to his game. We know it from the 75-yard touchdowns he was ripping last season. But I guess I wonder about the tread on the tires, but also, and I've talked about it, Taylor, with you on the show, like, I am of the mindset where you can't hitch your wagon to a running back. You kind of just got to rotate them through and keep getting new ones. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of why I'm also okay with this pick, because it's not like they spent 4 on Genty, right?
Right.
You have Ramondre. You used him for a couple seasons. You did sign him to a 4-year extension less than a year ago. Really, it's like a 2-year. He's already through 1. So,
they can get out of it pretty
that
easily
money's
next
movable.
year.
Yep. And now you reset another running back contract with a guy who he doesn't, like I mentioned the tread on his tires. He's a guy who has played a lot of football. But
Shuck just went to the Saints, by the way. Sanders is playing in the CFL next year.
Wow. That's wild.
Didn't mean to interrupt you. I just think it's interesting every
fine.
time a quarterback goes.
Dude, now I think it's personal. Like, he's not that bad. Tyler Shaw is like Tyler Shaw is best friends with like Brock Purdy.
Wow.
This dude is old as hell. And like, I know quarterbacks, not the same shelf life.
Holy shit.
Mike, sorry, continue. I didn't mean to jump in there.
I kind of I feel bad for Tayler Sanders. Like, that's crazy.
I do too. I'm now rooting for him. I think
that dude's 26 years old, Tyler Shuck. When did someone say it on our show last night? I don't know where I heard it. He was Justin Herbert's backup at Oregon in 2018. Tyler Shuck. Get a job. Now, granted, he has a job. So, like, good for him. He stuck it through. I'm not taking it away from Tyler Shuck. Obviously, I'm only joking around with that. But how does he go ahead of Shedeur? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, he's no Chris Wenke, but he's close. He's close. I wanted to add this on the Henderson thing, just in terms of kind of what you're trying to do as the Patriots. Like, you're not good enough to turn the ball over as much as you did, and that has to be a bit of a concern. But also, you don't want Drake May running as much. You know what? Like, you want to use him where you want to use him. But it's also nice to have some, a 3-down back with long speed who's also elite in pass protection. So again, you're still building up your offensive line. It is an area here that you have to consider that's important here, which is you just added to your pass pro with a guy who can be on the field for 3 downs. Whether he will be early on in his Patriot tenure, who knows? But I mean, over time, the assumption is that you could bring him in here. And I personally love, you got to love the 3-down backs, the guys with 3-down capabilities, because you just don't want to be tipping your hands all the time when you just have your clear 3rd down back. You want guys who can do it all. And I do like that. And just as a, 2 jobs in 1 sort of thing. I prefer this to them having grabbed a 3rd down back in the 4th round or the 5th round to go along with Ramondre Stevenson. Again, you're never going to fill every single hole and every single need here. I can get on board with this pick for sure. You know why? Because all of us kind of sort of a little bit wanted Genty, even though we knew it was horrible, right?
No. I was getting
we kind of saw Taylor put him at the top of his board.
Put that on me.
Taylor's excitable. But
I like stuff.
I like stuff. What was the superhero conversation, by the way? I missed that. I would have liked to jump
that was
in.
Awesome. So JP said
that's my wheelhouse too.
I know. So
Taylor, you asked the question and I just kind of toned out because I don't know.
I saw it. I saw
someone in the comments was like, Mike does not want to be here right now.
That was for me. But he said that Travis Hunter was Ben 10. Loved that. He said Campbell was like Hawkeye or Daredevil because they may not have the tools or whatever, but they're still well equipped.
Oh yeah, so you're fighting friggin' Galactus here with a bow and arrow, is what he's saying. You know, like,
hey, I'm the one who said I don't like Will Campbell versus Myles Garrett. I don't like that matchup, and that's the Galactus of the NFL. So yeah, you don't want him against the alien.
Galactus, Mike.
Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
If I said Thanos, you would have known. I was going with the
Okay.
I don't think he knows Spider-Man.
Thanos will work. Yeah,
Nerd. Doesn't even know Spider-Man.
yeah. Taylor and I nerd out about this stuff all the time.
That's okay.
I think we have more text conversations about shows we're watching than we do about work.
Shows, comic book stuff. Yeah. No doubt about it. Okay, so that's fine, Mike. Not on board, and that's okay. We'll get into it with round 3 sort of stuff because we don't know exactly who's going to be available here. But you do have the 2 third-round picks and the ability to move back up here. So if there is a receiver or another player that was in consideration here up high, and again, we go back to what we were talking about. Were the Patriots trying to trade out of it, or was there a disagreement in the room? And if there's a disagreement in the room, there might be another guy they really, really want who they might be able to get back up for. Maybe that guy was burdened and he went to the next pick, and that's that. But that's all that we've got here. But they do have 2 picks coming up in the 3rd round. What time do they talk? Do they talk after round 3? Or are you getting somebody? You guys got to jump on.
We're going to have a player soon.
You got Henderson coming up soon?
Henderson will talk, and then Wolf's talking after the entire round, but we'll be back on here for pick 69 and pick 77.
Okay, so just letting you, we will be back at the start of the 3rd round to talk about stuff. We are expecting to hear from TreVeyon Henderson, the newest member of the New England Patriots. Patriots going offense with their first 2 picks of the first 2 rounds with tackle Will Campbell and TreVeyon Henderson here. I'll ask you real quick, Taylor, before we bolt here, what were your impressions of Campbell in person? Again, everything we've seen and heard from him, I think he's winning over fans just with his attitude. That's not going to matter much if he can't play. Boy, do you want to like this guy, right?
I mean, sorry, Mike, you might want to tune out here. You know how like the Amazons made Wonder Woman out of clay and sculpted her in their image? That's exactly what I think Mike Vrabel did with Will Campbell. Like everything that comes out of this guy's mouth, I can just see like Vrabel spiritually in the background, like, that's my boy. Like he just says all the right stuff. He's media trained. Like he gives enough where you can see how much he cares. It reminded me of Drake also, where the emphasis on family was huge. Like this is just a dude who gets it. His priorities are in the right place, and he really does value family and connections and relationships. And we can, like you said, those things don't matter if you can't play. But I think Will Campbell can play, so it was just kind of reassured that he was. I think he was a home run Mike Vrabel pick. Was he a home run for a team at number 4? Maybe not. For the Patriots and what they needed right now, I think he really
and again, you know me, I don't talk myself into stuff just because it's like, oh, it's the Patriots and now I'm going to find a way to like this thing. I had been growing on the Campbell pick as time has gone on because, again, I think the conversation has been wrong about him the whole time, in the sense that I just think you're looking at one data point and one data point only and comparing it to everybody else who shares that same issue, which was the arm length or the shoulder width. But like, you really, to know whether or not that matters, you have to compare somebody who was a multiple year starter in the best conference in the country, taking on first round pick after first round pick after first round pick, giving up a 2.5% pressure rate and only 4 sacks in his entire college career, with an RAS score that was like the top 0.01% of all tackles in the last 20 years. So if you have another guy who has all of those things plus short arms and a small wingspan, and that guy busted, you can maybe say, well, not. But you're just taking the one data point and ignoring everything else. Perhaps the out is that the fact that he's already been that successful for that long. But then you're right. He talks and he says all the right things and he's got these great quotes and the shucks and I'm going to die. I want to go out there and die for everything.
I will kill myself for Drake May. I will fall on the sword.
I definitely think Vrabel got googly eyes. The one pause I had as I was thinking about how in love Vrabel is with this guy as being such a Vrabel guy is almost like Mayo convincing Kraft in Israel that he was the right guy. Like Kraft just knew. He looked into his soul and he knew. And I'm like, I don't want to use that judgment, but like that aside, you love everything you hear from Campbell. And you really want to root for him. So I think at least with his attitude, he's winning over some people. It's like you want the guy to be great. So I'll ask you guys this because somebody else put it out here. Dion said, we're talking about when the last time the Patriots had a running back that you were, holy shit, I believe this running back is on the Patriots. The answer is never.
Right.
You can
Corey
go back
Dillon?
Corey Dillon was great for a year, but he's a bit of a banger.
Yep.
Dion Lewis is probably the closest thing. The year or so you had Dion Lewis before he blew out his knee. Certainly those 9 games that year where he looked like Barry Sanders reincarnate. Is the closest.
Vrabel took notice because he tried to seal him.
Yeah.
Oh shit, that's right. Yeah.
Is the closest thing, and Curtis Martin is the correct answer. Curtis Martin is the last one, no question. And Corey Dillon was good for about 2 years, but he wasn't that guy. He was a beast, but he wasn't a guy who could do everything. And Curtis Martin didn't have long speed. He was just an awesome running back, probably one of the most underrated players in NFL history, honestly. But yes, Curtis Martin. It's been a long time since you had somebody who you could say like, this guy's a weapon. And that's kind of an interesting dynamic because you haven't or needed it. Kyle brought up Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis. I mean, that guy,
The law firm, baby,
is legit about as jaggy a jag as you could possibly get at the running back position. And they won with him.
He never fumbled.
That's because the balls were deflated, Taylor.
You're just carrying around a deflated beach ball.
Yeah. No, he was definitely jaggy. I mean, it was the fumble thing. The fumble thing was helpful, but he was just a guy, just like most running backs are, which is why I don't know why they took one.
Yeah.
You know, that backfield was my first as a like Patriots fan, or like when I actually started watching them. Like Danny Woodhead was the first player
I love
ever
Danny.
Loved. I liked him before I liked Tom Brady. Like one of my friends for my birthday gave me a Danny Woodhead shirt. I didn't really care that much about Brady at that point. I'm like, I like this little white dude who's making everybody miss in the backfield.
Danny Woodhead had ridiculous measurements too. He ran a 4.4 something. He was an insane athlete. Woodhead's superpower was hiding.
He was the best player in D2 football. He got that award or whatever.
He was incredible, but he would hide behind blockers and boom, just shoot through. He was awesome.
That Super Bowl, man. I hated watching that giant Super Bowl. I don't think my young self ever had that much anxiety, but like every time Woodhead touched the ball, I was so happy. He was awesome in that game.
John, Jaylen Brown looks like he's down on the court with some trainers around him. You watching this?
Oh no.
No, but he I was
with his hand.
Oh, his hand?
Yeah.
We're just bone bruising everything here.
Yeah, seriously.
Just bone bruise it all.
I'll leave that for
anyway, like I said,
do you think Missoula's gonna go on the court and just kick him in the face? Like, you're good, walk it off.
That video was awesome. That get up. I love that. John, I guilty as charged. I don't tune into the Garden Report like I used to a couple years back. You're a Joe Mazzulla guy, right?
Yes. Well, here's the thing. I think Joe Mazzulla is a legitimate basketball genius, a genius, like miles ahead. I use Belichick comparisons for Joe, and both in the way he handles the media too, because he's a dick, but he is miles ahead of people with the basketball stuff. It just took a while. Like, I think his brain was going so fast in the early going, but I think he's thinking on a totally different level than most people. Like, we went from what we all thought was a question mark to a legit strength. And I think down the stretch here, what he did with this team to prepare them for the playoffs was insane. Playing different lineups, different styles, trying to prepare for different things. They were just, the whole year was preseason. They were just figuring stuff out. It's really a shame if injuries are going to derail this, because I think they were legit headed for another title. But anyway,
he landed tough on his right hand, but we'll see what happens.
Who needs right hands? Anyway, guys, you want to wrap it and head off to do your TreVeyon stuff?
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll talk to him, and we'll be back towards the start of the third round. We'll go through picks. We'll start at the third. We'll go through 69, 77. We'll probably mull it over, and then we'll call it for the night. But yeah, we'll stay through both picks, and then obviously be back if they end up ever trading in or trading out.
Yep, exactly. So that's the plan, guys. If there's a trade, we'll hop on here as soon as possible. So just look for us right away. Otherwise, what is first pick of round 3?
65.
Yeah, we'll hop on right at the beginning of round 3 to get you primed for 69 here.
Yep.
We'll see.
Nice.
And on
that note,
we'll get you excited for 69. 69.
Wet their palates.
Anyway, all right, Gronk out.
Yeah.
I'll see, guard report over on the other channel after the game, but I'm jealous. I have FOMO already. I like this, I want to hang out.
Yeah, you're used to all your garden report guys. You only get us like this once a year.
And I also I have to sit here and watch you guys pretend that you like me, and that's okay. No,
Stop. I like you.
You guys have your own thing going. I always feel like a tourist crashing in here, but anyway,
We appreciate it.
yeah, thank you guys for hanging out. Thank everybody who's been on the stream. And again, I know from yesterday where we did 3+ hours, some people were there the whole friggin' time. So thank you guys for hanging out. We really do appreciate the hell out of you for supporting us and supporting the channel and watching the shows. And I'm sure you guys are fans of Tayler and Mike. So Patriots Daily is going to, continue rolling on throughout the draft. Taylor's going to have a lot of draft breakdowns as well, available to premium members if you want to sign up for that. Otherwise, we will see you guys when round 3 begins. For Mike Kadlick, Tayler Kyles, I'm John Zannis. Thank you guys for hanging out. We'll see you in a little bit.